I'm planning a trip with your grandparents, I said. What about you? Do you have any plans? I called my son Anthony after my in-laws invited us on a vacation. I have practice, so you all should go and have fun. But isn't this trip a bit out of the ordinary? Are you okay, Mom? I'll manage. I'll bring you back a souvenir. Work hard at your practice. Ensign, under my influence, has always been into marathon running. He even got into college on a running scholarship. He studies at a nearby university but stays in the dorms to save commuting time, coming home only during long holidays. I knew he could have joined the trip, but I thought I should at least ask him. His response was exactly what I anticipated. My name is Flora, a 46-year-old working woman. My husband, Steve, is 4 years older and was once my boss. He's competent, and I respect him. After our marriage and the birth of our son, we built a happy family. Yet somewhere along the way, our relationship began to break down. The root cause: my husband's parents, especially his mother, who had a problem with me from the moment we married and has been bullying me ever since. Initially, Steve stood up for me, and because we lived far away from his parents, we seldom met them and managed to get by. But when our son, who loves marathoning, wanted to attend a high school near my in-laws, things changed. The reason he got into running was me. I used to run marathons and still do occasionally. It made me happy to see him take an interest in running just like me, so I convinced Steve to move closer to the high school my son wanted to attend. Steve applied for a transfer at work for our son's sake, and we moved. My son was recommended for his university from this high school, so I think it worked out well. Go get the rental car tomorrow morning and pick up my parents on your way back, Steve said the day before our trip. This left me confused. Huh? Why am I the one renting the car? What are you going to do? I'm tired from work, so I'll sleep until the last minute. Once you pick up my parents, come back, and I'll take over from there. It's in the same direction as our destination anyway. I could understand what he was saying, but if anything, I was more exhausted. Despite working similar hours, I was the one taking care of all the housework. When I think about it, we used to split the household chores equally. However, ever since we moved closer to his parents, they've been visiting us frequently. When his mother saw Steve doing housework, she vehemently opposed it. Housework is the wife's job. It's not something the breadwinner should do. Isn't that right, Flora? Overwhelmed by her intensity, I initially nodded in agreement. This continued until Steve eventually stopped doing anything around the house. It was partly Steve's fault, but I believe the main cause was his mother. Moreover, Steve started to echo his mother's sentiment, saying, "I am the breadwinner," every now and then. By that time, it was too late for me to correct the situation, and I didn't even feel like trying anymore. Steve changed drastically over the past few years. His work performance seemed to have declined, and he frequently vented his frustrations on me. However, I realized that arguing back was more trouble than it was worth, so I decided to simply accept things as they are. That's the least stressful way for me to live. There were times I considered getting a divorce, but when it came time for our son's college recommendation, I feared it could disadvantage him if we were a single-parent family, so I couldn't go through with the divorce. Instead, I tricked my mind into believing I was taking care of a dog, not a person, and surprisingly, it did relieve some of my stress. So I began to feel like it wasn't worth expending my energy on getting a divorce, and that's how I've arrived at where I am today. The reason I agreed to join this trip was because it was to a resort that I absolutely love. I knew I could thoroughly enjoy myself even if I ended up doing things alone. Heck, I was even ready to do things separately from my in-laws and husband. Perhaps I was invited mainly because they needed someone to share the driving, but both my husband and my father-in-law can drive, so it'll work out one way or another. Anyway, I played along with the notion that our pampered pooch was being demanding again, went to get the rental car as my husband instructed, and headed to my in-laws' place. "Flora, you're late. Is that the car for today? You should have rented a bigger one." "Well, it's better than your tiny car at least. The car we usually use is the one I bought since I drive to work. I assumed I would be the primary user and I pay for it myself. We don't go out of town often, so I thought a small car would be just fine. I loved its interior design and color, so I bought it. Yet my husband would take it without asking and even let his parents ride in it. My in-laws complained about the car being small and looked down on me as if I could only afford a small car. I thought they could just use my father-in-law's car for the trip. However, he didn't like others driving his car and didn't want to drive it himself for the entire trip, So we ended up renting a car. Even so, I wasn't consulted about any of this. I just found out that I would be the one to pick up the rental car and drive it, with them in the back seat the whole time. It made me want to tell them to drive themselves. In a word, they are tiresome. In the end, my husband, who had said he would take turns driving, slept the entire time. My father-in-law didn't want to drive unless it was his own car, so I ended up driving all the way to our destination. With my husband asleep, my father-in-law kept criticizing my driving. He would say things like, "You could have turned left there, even though an oncoming car was obviously approaching," or "Why didn't you go, even though the light was turning red?" It was nothing but unnecessary stress. My mother-in-law joined in, saying, "Flora, your driving is as bad as ever." I didn't want to be criticized by a woman who can't even drive. At least I'm better than my father-in-law, who, as far as I know, has crashed his car at least 5 times. Despite being told he should surrender his license before causing a major accident, my mother-in-law kept insisting it was just bad luck and that he is a good driver. Well, I didn't want to ride in a car driven by my father-in-law anyway. I don't mind driving, but I'd appreciate it if they could stop interfering all the time. Upon reaching our destination, my husband finally woke up. Since we had been in the car all day and were tired, we followed my in-laws' wish to spend the day relaxing in the hotel, so we didn't go out. I enjoyed myself by swimming in the pool and exploring the hotel. It was a fulfilling time. After having dinner and going to the spa, I returned to find my husband already asleep. I didn't know what my in-laws were doing in the next room, but they were probably asleep too. I had a beer in the room before crawling into bed. I woke up in the fresh morning air. My husband was still asleep, and with some time until breakfast, I decided to take a morning stroll. But when I came back, the unthinkable had happened. Upon entering the room, my husband was nowhere to be found. Shocked, I scanned the room. His luggage was also missing. I stepped out and rang the doorbell to my in-laws' room next door, but there was no answer. When I went to the front desk to inquire, I was told my husband and in-laws had already finished breakfast. Though they had told me breakfast was at 8:30, it seems they actually reserved it an hour earlier, exactly when I had gone for my walk. On top of that, I was left to check out. Did that mean my mother-in-law's offer to pay for our stay was a lie? With no other option, I paid for both rooms and left the hotel. Of course, there was no car. As I was pondering what to do next, my cell phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. "Where are you now?" When I asked that, my mother-in-law started laughing. "We're having quality time as a family since we're on vacation." "Oh, is that so? Well then, why didn't you just come as 3 from the start instead of leaving me behind?" "Well, you wanted to come here, didn't you, Flora? That's why we brought you along." I remembered mentioning how I wanted to visit this resort a while back, while watching TV with my husband. Is that what he remembered? Usually it would be nice if he remembered what I casually said, but this time it was used just to annoy me. Moreover, I was the one who did most of the driving to get here. Why do I have to hear that I was brought here by my mother-in-law, who never drove nor paid? I was past the point of anger and could only sigh. "All right then, we'll go sightseeing as a family and head home first. You do some sightseeing too, Flora, and come back. We don't know how you'll get back, but you're good at marathons, aren't you? Just run back," my mother-in-law mocked. At her laughter, my anger exploded. "Is Steve driving? Put me on speakerphone so he can hear me." When I said that, it seemed my mother-in-law switched over, and I could hear my husband's voice. "Good morning. You wanted to come here, didn't you? Take it easy today, but remember there's laundry from the trip to be done. Make sure you wash it by tomorrow morning." He sounded cheerful. I had no more feelings for him. "Do your own laundry." "Hey, that's no way to talk. I'm the breadwinner, and telling you to take it easy today. You should be saying thank you." "Oh right, the breadwinner. But don't worry, this is the last time we'll see each other. Well, all you've really seen of me is me sleeping." "What do you mean? We need to come home today. There's laundry and house cleaning to be done." "Yeah, that's why I'm not going back." "What are you talking about?" His voice was shaken. "I'm getting a divorce. You told me half a year ago, didn't you, that you met your soulmate, your childhood friend, and you were going to marry her? You reunited when she moved back to your hometown, right? The childhood friend who had divorced. Remember you showed me the divorce papers?" "About 6 months ago, I confronted my husband because something felt off, and he came clean. He had met his childhood friend and decided she was his soulmate. He wanted to divorce me and remarry her, She had a middle school-aged child and was struggling as a single mother, and he wanted to support her. So he asked me for a divorce. Truthfully, I had lost my feelings for my husband, but I wasn't quite ready to say, okay, let's get a divorce. He gave me the pre-filled divorce papers, but I didn't agree to divorce. We didn't speak for a few days after that, but when I stopped doing the household chores, he was in a bind. A few days later, he said, forget about what I said before. Well, I couldn't just forget it, and I started gathering evidence of his infidelity. Could it be that Steve planned this trick to get on my good side? I mused. The conversation happened about 3 months ago. It was right after you quit your job, I said. Surprised voices from my in-laws on the other end of the speakerphone echoed. This must have been the first time they heard about their son quitting his job. When you said you were quitting your job, I told you it would be hard to get a new job, and I disagreed with your reason, right? I recalled you said that you were an excellent worker and would find a new job right away, but you only found a part-time job. I wonder when you'll find a proper job. My husband was driving and staying quiet, so I took the opportunity to spill everything. I've been coping with stress by imagining you as a dog, but then I thought I might as well get an actual dog, I declared. So I'll submit the divorce papers. Enjoy your family vacation. My in-laws were calling my name in shock, and my husband was trying to say something, but I cut the call without paying any attention. I decided to enjoy sightseeing before heading home. When I explained the situation over the phone to my son, he said, I told you. Well, if you're divorcing, that's fine, Anson said. His reaction was lighter than I expected, given he knew the situation. After returning from the trip, I didn't go home. I had been keeping mine Anson's belongings in a self-storage unit, ready for any situation. With only the bare necessities with me, I dragged my suitcase to a real estate agency. The sales representative, a woman of my generation and someone I'd had drinks with a few times, greeted me. Over those drinks, I'd often complained about my husband and in-laws and asked her to always keep an eye on available properties just in case. That day, I signed a contract for my own place. Feeling relieved, I decided to submit the divorce papers at City Hall. The divorce was granted without any issue. Finally, I returned the countless calls my husband had made. Hello, I started. The divorce papers have been accepted. We are now officially strangers. My husband's panicked voice echoed through the phone. Are you serious about the divorce? I broke up with her. Now, there's only you. You didn't like me looking at other women, right? Now I'm only looking at you, so come back without worries. But all I felt for his words was revulsion. What are you talking about? I never intended to please you in the first place. And you didn't break up with her, did you? You were dumped because you couldn't find a job and had no money, right? It turned out that my husband's mistress was a friend of the sales rep who had introduced us to her new place. Talk about a small world. She had been listening to complaints about my husband from the mistress who claimed to be his current girlfriend. Apparently, after he quit his job and started working part-time, she saw no point in being with him and broke up. But a fling is a fling. I'm definitely going to demand compensation. Compensation? I told you, we broke up. Now there's only you. I could only sigh at this point. So you're saying that now that you're single, you're thinking of having another affair? I don't care what you do, but I'm done being exploited. You didn't even notice that your stuff at home was missing because you didn't care, did you? I'm not going back, so throw away what you don't need. With that, I hung up the phone. Even after that, my ex-husband kept calling me, and even my former in-laws reached out. But of course, I'm never going back to that house. My ex-husband still hasn't found a job, can't pay the rent, and has moved back in with his parents. My ex-father-in-law is still driving dangerously and recently crashed into a neighbor's fence with my ex-mother-in-law in the car. Fortunately, no one else was injured, but they didn't have property insurance and had to borrow money to cover the repair cost. All of this was written in emails that my ex-husband kept sending me on his own. I find his misfortune slightly amusing. I don't reply, but I haven't blocked his emails either, just quietly enjoying the show. Since I moved to a pet-friendly property, I started keeping a small dog and realized that I enjoy taking care of a dog more than taking care of people. My son, worried about me being alone, has started coming over on weekends, a change from his previous habit of only visiting on long holidays. I'm living a fulfilling life every day. Maybe this weekend, I'll go back to that resort town for the first time in a while. Help me, brother, I cried as I stumbled into my brother's place in the middle of a freezing winter night, wearing ragged clothes and holding the baby in my arms. My brother was speechless at the sight of me, so changed and frail, clad only in a tattered shirt and barefoot. What on earth happened? He quickly asked, ushering me into the house and warming up the room. The baby, wrapped in my jacket, was sound asleep, but I couldn't stop shivering. Who did this to my precious little sister? My brother muttered through clenched teeth. Lily, it's going to be okay now. Upon hearing my brother's gentle voice, I felt a wave of relief wash over me as if all the strength had drained from my body. My name is Lily, a 27-year-old homemaker with a young son. I was once a nurse until Terry, the son of the hospital director, proposed to me. Terry was kind and efficient in his work, which initially attracted me to him. I have a brother who is 5 years older than me, and after our parents' tragic death in a car accident when I was 4 and he was in 3rd grade, he became my protector. Our parents died when their car was hit head-on by a truck whose driver had fallen asleep at the wheel. My mother, also a nurse, was working late, and it happened when my father went to pick her up. Before leaving to pick her up, my father had casually told my brother, Derek, I'm counting on you to take care of Lily. These words became unforgettable for my brother, who took them to heart and has protected me ever since. We never fought. He has always been like a superhero to me. After the accident, it seemed my brother and I would be sent to separate foster homes. However, our paternal grandparents, who we hadn't interacted much with until then, took us in. When I first met our grandfather, his white hair and bushy beard made him look like a storybook Santa Claus. Seeing Derek, he muttered, You're the spitting image of your father, and I believe I saw tears in his eyes. Our grandmother was a kind woman who hugged me tightly and sobbed, Poor child. Later, I learned that our father had fallen out with our grandfather, leaving home in what amounted to running away. Our grandfather wanted him to continue the family business, but our father wanted his freedom. Neither would yield, and they ended up parting on bad terms. Derek and I moved to our grandparents' house nestled in the rural mountains. Our grandfather, a renowned potter, created works so famous that a single teacup could sell for thousands of dollars. Thanks to this, Derek and I grew up without financial difficulties. Our grandfather was stubborn, hated dishonesty, and dedicated himself completely to his work, while our grandmother was incredibly kind. Despite our parents no longer being with us, under our grandparents' watchful eyes, we grew up happily. Derek attended a prestigious university in the city, and I went to nursing school. We both had the chance to follow our dreams. However, when our grandmother's health deteriorated, Derek returned home from the city. I wanted to return too, but as I was still a student, Derek advised against it. Derek had always been interested in our grandfather's work but was firmly told to follow his own path, leading him to university. I think our grandfather regretted forcing our deceased father to continue the family business and didn't want his grandchildren to go through the same thing. However, Derek insisted on being taught pottery by our grandfather. He had always been handy, making pottery a good fit for him. Besides, Derek excelled at everything, academics, sports, and he was popular among his friends. He was truly a superhero, taking care of our sick grandmother while mastering the art of pottery. While learning the trade from our grandfather, I graduated from nursing school and started working as a nurse. That's when Terry proposed, and we got married. We had a grand wedding, and what I remember most are the joyous smiles of Derek and our grandfather. Derek brought pictures of our parents to the wedding. We all just want you to be happy, Lily, including Mom and Dad, he said, shedding tears openly. Our grandmother, too ill to attend, cried tears of joy when she saw the video of the ceremony. I felt truly blessed with a great family. I quit my job as a nurse, moved into my husband Terry's family home, and began to support him as a full-time homemaker. We had a child, and Terry was kind. Our life seemed smooth sailing, and I couldn't have imagined the hellish days that were to come. Not long after my grandmother passed away, Terry attended the funeral with me and comforted me. My grandfather's disappointment was so severe that I couldn't even speak to him. Derek, while supporting our grandfather, immersed himself more and more into his pottery. 6 months passed. Help me, brother, I cried as I fled to my brother's place in the middle of a freezing winter night, wearing ragged clothes and holding a baby in my arms. Derek was at a loss for words upon seeing my drastically changed appearance. I was so skinny and weak, just wearing a thin, tattered shirt and barefoot. What on earth happened? He quickly let me in and warmed up the room. The baby wrapped in my coat was sound asleep, but I couldn't stop shivering. Who did this to my dear sister? Derek murmured through clenched teeth. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as if all strength had left my body. I didn't want to worry Derek or our grandfather, but I had no choice but to tell them. I began to recount the events at my in-laws' house. Terry and I had been living together, but due to my in-laws' concern that I should rest during and after pregnancy, we moved into their house. My in-laws, both remarried, seemed like a genuinely close family. Terry was the stepson of my mother-in-law. I was happy that my child and I could become part of this family. My father-in-law was kind to me, telling me to make myself at home. Having no father, his kindness was precious to me. However, my mother-in-law seemed not to like this. You're flirting with my husband, aren't you, you disgusting woman, she began to say. She started harassing me when my father-in-law was not around. You're an uneducated child with no parents, she said, not just verbally abusing me but also causing physical harm. She spilled boiling water towards me, planted pins in my meals, and even tried to push me down the stairs. It was life-threatening. My mother-in-law's family had a long-standing reputation in the retail business, managing a major department store chain run by her brother. Your background is miles apart from mine. You can't blend with someone who grew up in poverty, she said, looking down on me. Then, a situation arose that added to my troubles. With a shortage of staff at the hospital, a former nurse was often called in to help, working alongside my husband Terry. During this time, I noticed something unsettling. Terry, being the son of the hospital director, was often seen reprimanding the nurses unreasonably. Move quicker, you're a nurse getting paid, aren't you? Don't slack off just because my father is lenient. Once I take over this hospital, I won't be so forgiving. How many times do I have to tell you? Order the supplies in advance. They're not cheap, you know. Don't take running a hospital lightly. Such unreasonable remarks were directed at nurses who were working hard for the patients. Terry, don't you think that's too harsh? Everyone here is trying their best, I interjected. He didn't take kindly to this. Furious that I had stood up to him, he flew off the handle in front of the other nurses. Since then, Terry became distant towards me. It might have also been influenced by my mother-in-law, who had been telling Terry from the start, "You're too soft on your wife. She's taking you for granted." While my father-in-law was still well, Terry couldn't be openly hostile or abusive in front of him. But then my father-in-law fell seriously ill and became bedridden. When it rains, it pours. My mother-in-law seized the opportunity and made me take care of all the chores, treating me like a housekeeper. I was extremely busy carrying my son on my back, cooking, doing laundry, and cleaning. Even in front of my father-in-law, my mother-in-law began to mistreat me, but my weakened father-in-law was unable to stop her. "Please don't speak to Lily that way," he would say. "Here you go again defending that woman, and you can't even do anything with your frail body." "Oh, how I wish you were gone," she would retort, spewing venom at my sick father-in-law. I endured it for the sake of my son and father-in-law. The harassment escalated. "Housekeepers don't eat with the family. Eat the leftovers later," she told me. I was so upset that I lost my appetite. When I looked in the mirror, I was shocked to see my gaunt and ragged reflection. My husband said, "I only married you because you were a bit attractive, but I never thought you'd become such a shabby woman. I'm too embarrassed to be seen with you." He told me to move from our bedroom to the storeroom. How cruel can people be? My husband and mother-in-law began to verbally abuse even my son. "Of course he's not smart. Look at who his mother is," my mother-in-law would say. "His constant crying is annoying. Make him stop right now," my husband would demand. It felt as if something inside me had snapped. I had made up my mind to run away. My only concern was my father-in-law. If I didn't take care of him, he would be in trouble. However, my father-in-law said, "Don't worry about me, Lily. You should escape to your brother's place." He pulled out several $100 bills from under his pillow and pressed them into my hand. I decided to flee on the spot in the clothes I was wearing. I wrapped my son in my coat to keep him warm, rushed outside, hailed a taxi with the money my father-in-law had given me, and headed to my grandfather's house. I poured out the whole story to my grandfather and my brother Derek all at once. Derek, making a furious face I had never seen before, was shaking his clenched fist. Derek reassured me, saying, "You've had it tough, haven't you? It's okay now, relax." I burst into tears. My grandfather also muttered, "I can't forgive this." A few days later, I left my son with my grandfather and decided to return to my in-laws' house with Derek to collect my belongings. I had left in a hurry without a word, so I thought it would cause trouble if there was any fuss. When we returned to my in-laws' house, my husband muttered with a cold gaze, "You finally returned, huh?" Derek calmly replied, "My sister seems very distressed, so we'll be taking care of her for a while. We came today to collect some of her personal belongings." My husband retorted, "I married her, so if she doesn't come back, there will be no one to do the chores. That's a big problem for me." My mother-in-law, looking down on Derek, said, "I heard you do pottery. It must be a poor life, isn't it? Even if you take care of my daughter-in-law, it's going to be tough for you, right? Please send her back. It's a problem for us too." Derek clenched his fists tightly. I could see that he was desperately trying to suppress his anger. When we asked to take back our belongings, we were directed to a storage room in the corner of the hallway that served as my room. In the corner of the cramped room were cardboard boxes and old appliances carelessly placed. There were a few changes of clothes for me and my son, no heating appliances, just a thin blanket and a thin mattress. Derek was at a loss for words, seeing the harsh conditions I was living under. When he glared at my mother-in-law, saying, "Is this where you shoved my dear sister and her child?" she retorted, "She should be grateful just to have a room. She's just a housekeeper." I wanted to get out of that house as soon as possible, but I was worried about my father-in-law and wanted to see him. When I did, he quietly handed me something and apologized to Derek for not being able to protect me. For several days after that, we made preparations. Along with my grandfather and Derek, I headed to my in-laws' house. I was determined to fight for my son. I couldn't keep running away forever. When we arrived, I handed my husband the divorce papers. He was taken aback for a moment, but then declared he wouldn't pay alimony or child support since I was choosing to leave. I played a recording of his mother belittling me and him shouting at me. "This is evidence of the abuse I suffered," I informed them. My husband and mother-in-law looked shocked, asking, "When did you even record this?" It turns out my father-in-law had secretly recorded everything to help me. He had discreetly passed the recording to me when I went to collect my things a few days before. Derek, who had graduated from law school and passed the bar exam while assisting our grandfather with his pottery work, said I could get a divorce since my husband was at fault. Derek had been actively practicing law to help those in need in our local community, and now he promised to fight for me wholeheartedly. My wheelchair-bound father-in-law showed up and handed the divorce papers to my mother-in-law. He had also recorded all the verbal abuse he had endured and was now ready to divorce as well. He preferred living in a care facility over living with my mother-in-law. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law burst into laughter. "I'll gladly divorce you and return to my brother's house and go back to my luxurious life," she said. At that moment, my grandfather made a call stating, "I'll terminate any contracts with a family like this." It turns out the major department store run by my mother-in-law's brother was on the verge of bankruptcy. He had been eagerly trying to strike a deal to exhibit and sell my famous grandfather's pottery and was close to finalizing it. Immediately, a call came from her brother, the department store owner, severing ties. My mother-in-law blanched, muttering, "That's impossible," and sank to her knees. She finally seemed to understand her situation and started to beg. "Please forgive me. I was out of line. I have nowhere else to go. Please let me stay here, Lily. I'm sorry. Please forgive me." There was no way we could forgive her now. We all coldly stared at my weeping mother-in-law. However, just one person still didn't seem to fully grasp the situation. It was my husband. He said to me, "I'm set to inherit this hospital. If you want a divorce, I'll pay alimony and child support. I'll marry someone younger and prettier than you." But then my father-in-law said a single sentence, "The hospital has been sold." My husband's eyes widened in shock. What? In fact, Terry, requested by my father-in-law, had been pulling the strings. "Get out of here right now," my father-in-law screamed at his stepson. My husband's face turned white. He was not legally adopted by my father-in-law, who was actually his stepfather, so he had no legal claim on his stepfather's assets. On the contrary, I was legally adopted by my father-in-law, who had taken good care of me. Sensing the tide of events, my husband quickly changed his tune, pleading for a fresh start with me. I coldly dismissed him. Afterwards, my son and I were doted on and enjoyed life at my grandparents' house. He now cried less often and spent his time playing in nature, finding flowers and insects. My in-laws divorced. The audio tape proved crucial in establishing the fault of my mother-in-law. According to mutual acquaintances, my mother-in-law and husband are now living in a small rented apartment. Their attempts at finding new jobs had gone well, and they seem to be getting by on part-time work. Their days are filled with endless quarrels, each blaming the other for their current situation. My grandfather is living comfortably in a high-end senior home, and my son and I visit him often. Derek, as always, continues to work with pottery under my grandfather's guidance. My mother-in-law's brother, who wasn't at fault, had the pottery exhibition at a department store. At the exhibition, my brother met a lovely woman who was a fan of pottery, and they started dating. I expect we'll hear good news from him soon. I work as a nurse at a hospital near my grandfather's house. It was my dream to become a nurse like my mother, and now I find fulfillment in caring for my patients. Hey there, I'm Lisa, and I'm here to share a story about breaking free from old patterns and escaping the grip of a toxic relationship with my ex-husband, Jackson. This journey has been a roller coaster of ups and downs, but it ultimately led to self-discovery. I'm sharing my story for all the women, and even men, dealing with similar situations, hoping to inspire them to take a stand against what is wrong. Let me begin by telling you about Jackson, the man I once thought was my everything. We met in college, and he had that classic bad boy vibe that made me starry-eyed. Little did I know that beneath that magnetic exterior was a world of chaos. After graduation, he proposed, and I said yes. If I could go back in time, that's the moment I would change. Neither of us had a real job, and we were barely scraping by with low-paying gigs that could hardly cover rent for our tiny apartment. Back then, it felt like an adventure, but looking back, it was a big red flag. Jackson always claimed he loved me more than life itself, showering me with affection. But as time passed, I realized it wasn't love, not the healthy kind anyway. It was an obsession. He was insanely jealous and overbearingly possessive, qualities I initially mistook for protectiveness. Jackson had a knack for turning innocent situations into full-blown dramas. I lost count of the times he got jealous over people simply smiling at me. He even got mad at my cousins for being close to me. I convinced myself it was his way of showing love, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. Things escalated when he asked me to quit my job because he didn't like the guys I worked with. "Babe, I need to talk to you about something. I think you should quit your job." "What?" "Why, Jackson? Don't you trust me?" "It's not about trust, Lisa. It's those guys you work with. I don't trust them. You can't just hide me away from the world, Jackson." "I wish I could, babe. I just worry about you. It's not a safe world we live in. You don't get it. With my degree, I can get a better job, which means a better life for us. You know I have a degree too from the same college. I'm a bit slow right now, but I promise one day I'll provide everything you deserve. It's not about what you can provide. I never doubted your ability. I need to work on my career too. Independence is crucial these days. I just can't stand the thought of any guys getting close to you. It's your call now. It's either me or the job. I would choose you in a heartbeat." I couldn't believe I had been such a fool to leave my job just because he asked me to. At first, it seemed like he cared so much, taking care of our finances and everything. But it didn't take long for me to realize he wasn't just overprotective. He was controlling. He didn't want me to go out with friends, even for innocent nights out. He claimed he was worried about my safety, but in reality, he was more concerned about losing control. Then, a new problem arose. Jackson started getting into gambling. At first, it was just occasional poker nights with his buddies, but it quickly escalated. Soon, he was spending our hard-earned money at casinos and betting on sports events. When I tried to talk to him about it, he brushed off my concerns, saying it was just a way to relax and have some fun. But it wasn't fun anymore. His obsession with gambling took a toll on our finances. Bills piled up, and we struggled to make ends meet. "Jackson, babe, we need to talk about your gambling. It's spiraling out of control and affecting both of us." "What are you talking about, sweetie? I can handle it. It's just a bit of fun." "Fun? Jackson, we're drowning in debt, and you've lost so much money lately. It's not fun anymore. It's an addiction." "I can't believe you're accusing me like this. I know what I'm doing." "Jackson, please, for me?" "Okay, maybe I'll try to cut down a bit. Just for you, love." One day, Jackson came home carrying something I could never have imagined in my wildest dreams, a stack of divorce papers. My heart sank as he handed them to me. Despite the challenges and struggles, I thought we were in this together. "Jackson, why? We've been through so much together. We can work through whatever this is. Lisa, I don't know. It just felt like the right thing to do. We're not living the dream life we thought we would. Even though I love you, I can't keep going like this. It's over for me. We promised each other we would stick together no matter what. I know we made those promises, but things have changed. This is happening. You cannot stop it. I'll see you in court. After the courtroom procedures, our 3-year marriage ended just like that. I couldn't find closure in the vague excuse he gave for ending our marriage. The thought of reaching out to him one more time to rekindle the old flame was tempting. I couldn't bring myself to give up just yet. I decided to make up a reason to talk to him, claiming he had left some belongings at our old apartment. It was a silly excuse, but I needed to hear his voice to understand what had gone wrong. I dialed his number. The phone rang and rang, but Jackson did not pick up. I felt a pang of disappointment, but didn't give up. I left him a heartfelt voicemail, pouring out my feelings and asking him to call me back. Hours turned into days, and there was still no response. A week later, after countless attempts to reach him, I received a message from my phone provider. You cannot send messages to this conversation. I assumed he had blocked me, making it clear that he had moved on. It was one of the biggest mysteries of my life. Jackson, the man I thought would be by my side forever, had disappeared without a trace. What had gone wrong? Why had he given up on our marriage? Why had he walked away without a proper explanation? It was then that I knew I had no choice but to move forward. With my parents' financial support, I picked up the pieces of my life and started on a journey to rebuild myself. It wasn't a walk in the park, but I was determined to bounce back. I realized that to boost my career prospects, I needed to upgrade my skills. So, I dove into self-improvement, determined to add some impressive new bullet points to my resume. After a lot of hard work and personal growth, I landed a gig as a junior brand consultant at a fancy arts and antiques company. This was a big deal for me and a clear sign that my efforts were paying off. Little did I know that this job would lead to even greater things. Within a year, my commitment and hustle caught the attention of my bosses, and I was promoted to the main brand consultant. Finally, I could start securing my financial future. But wait, there's more to my story. I also met someone who would become very important in my life. His name was Joshua, and he's now my husband. Our paths crossed at the grocery store when he bumped into me. Hey, I've seen you somewhere. Are you Jackson's wife? Yeah, that's me, his ex-wife. I remember now. I once did some business with Jackson and he got ridiculously hammered. You had to swoop in and save the day. Ah, that infamous night. It's a hilarious yet dark tale for sure. So, what happened between the two of you, if you don't mind me asking? I don't know myself. It's a long story. Well, can I have your number, and we can talk about it over coffee if you want? Sure, why not? Great, looking forward to hearing that story. After that casual coffee date with Joshua, we talked about the infamous night when Jackson was, well, Jackson. As I started sharing my side of the story, Joshua really listened. He wasn't just hearing me, he was genuinely listening. It felt liberating to have someone care enough to understand what I had been through. Joshua helped me see that Jackson was a textbook narcissist and that I had been stuck in a toxic and abusive situation for far too long. It was eye-opening. We kept meeting up, sometimes for a bite or just to hang out. Joshua treated me with respect, something I had almost forgotten. He patiently let me heal and grow, never pushing me to talk, but always being there when I needed to vent. Gradually, I started falling for him, not just because he had been a great listener when I needed to talk about my Jackson drama, but also because he was an amazing person, funny, kind, and down to earth. We had this connection that felt like it was meant to be. One day, as we were lounging in a park, he looked at me and said, "You deserve to be happy, Lisa. You deserve someone who loves you for who you are." That's when it hit me. He was talking about himself too. After 2 blissful years of dating, Joshua finally got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. You can imagine how over the moon happy I was. My parents were thrilled too, and it felt like the fresh start I had been waiting for. A man with stability, a fantastic personality, and a heart full of love. What more could a girl ask for? It was like the universe had aligned all my lucky stars in my favor. During those 2 years, everything was falling into place. I was excelling at work and living the dream life I had always imagined. Out of the blue, when I was riding high on this cloud of happiness, something came along to shake things up. It was one of those moments when you realize that life is not a straight line. The day after my wedding, on my first day back at work as Mrs. Lisa Baker, I noticed a cake on my desk. My first thought was that it was probably from one of my friends, a belated congratulations for the wedding or something. But as I opened the box, my heart sank. There, in big bold red letters, the cake spelled out CHETR. I quickly closed the box before anyone else could catch a glimpse of it. So there I was at my desk, wondering who had played such a sick prank on me when my phone rang with an unknown number flashing on the screen. Hey there, Jane. It's me, Jackson. I can't believe you're calling after all this time. Where have you been? This is unbelievable. Wait, did you send me the cake? Yeah, I did. Well, it's not a catch-up, to be honest. Consider it a loyalty test. I wanted to see if you would still pick up when I call you, for old time's sake. A loyalty test, I thought you would still be mine, and you just moved on. I was right after all. Look at you. I knew I couldn't trust you. You belong to the streets. Jackson, are you hearing yourself? You're the one who divorced me without any reason, and now you're calling me names when I moved on. Oh, I heard about your little wedding that happened yesterday, Lisa. I hope I'm not disturbing you on your honeymoon. How on earth did you know? News travels fast, especially when your ex-wife is hooked up to your old business acquaintances. That doesn't give you the right to call me and complain. You made your decision, and I made mine. Lisa, you've always been a bit helpless, haven't you? I bet you couldn't pay your own bills. That's why you clung to that poor Joshua. I must say he has grown a pair too. Can't we just move past this? Just check your messages. I just sent you a picture. I couldn't believe it. Jackson had sent me a picture of his laptop screen displaying his bank account balance, showing a total of $300,000. Where did all this money come from? Gambling, among other things. Turns out you were the one holding me back all along. You didn't stay loyal, did you? Remarried an old friend, eh? You always were a bit of a loser, and you weren't doing so well financially. I assume that's why you married Joshua, right? Some things never change. You will always be the same, Lisa, forever struggling and needing help. Well, have fun staying poor. You know what, Jackson? I don't need this. Don't you ever try to contact me again. You are just history to me now. Bye. Be careful choosing your words, Lisa. I slammed the phone down on Jackson. What was he even going on about? A loyalty test. It felt like he had been treating my life as some sort of joke for the past 3 years. It was becoming increasingly clear that he had always been a narcissist, but it had taken me this long to see it. Strangely, I didn't mention the encounter with Jackson to Joshua. We had just celebrated our wedding day, and I didn't want to spoil our happiness. After that creepy Jackson encounter, I started feeling unsafe, as if he might want to harm me. But I kept it to myself and eventually pushed it aside, hoping it would fade away. Then 6 months later, something totally nuts happened. One quiet Sunday night, Joshua and I were chilling at home, watching a movie. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and I answered it cautiously. Guess who it was? A Slosh Jackson, smelling like a brewery. I was shocked and scared. Why was he here, and what was he up to? Joshua stepped in, all protective, but we were both baffled and uneasy. I need to talk to Jane. Jackson, you're drunk. Go away. We do not want you here. Not now, not ever. Please just let me. Jackson, please just go, buddy. She's not your wife anymore. I need to talk to her. Jackson, leave now, or I might have to call the cops. I admit that a part of me was worried about Jackson. His life had taken a nosedive, and it did stir up a tad bit of concern. But let's be real, it was not my problem anymore. After everything he had put me through, all I had for him was pure hatred. Once Jackson was gone, I decided to open up to Joshua about the phone call. It was a difficult conversation, but Joshua proved to be my rock. He had my back, no questions asked. He made me feel safe, assuring me there was nothing to fear. The next day, Joshua was at work, and I found myself alone at home. My phone rang, and it was Jackson calling again. What's the deal, Jackson? Why are you calling me now? Lisa, I need to apologize for everything I put you through. An apology after all these years? What brought this on? I always believed no amount of therapy could ever fix you because you're so messed up. Lisa, I'm in a tough spot. I need some financial help. I know you might not have much, but… Financial help? I knew this wasn't so innocent. Calling me poor, remember? You always thought I lacked potential and control over my life. That's why you tried to manipulate me. But you know what, Jackson? Check your messages. I hung up on Jackson, then sent him a picture of my bank balance, $600,000, double what he had in his account a while back. Jackson called me up again, this time crying. Lisa, darling, I'm genuinely sorry for mistreating you and trying to control you. Where did you get all this money from? Stop crying in front of me, it's pathetic. Where I got my money is simple. I earned it. I'm a brand consultant now. Oh my God, Lisa, can you please help me? I've lost everything to gambling. I can't afford a place to stay. I beg you, honey, this could be a game changer for me. Funny how the tables turn, isn't it? Look at you now, almost homeless with a gambling addiction and a narcissistic personality. No family, no friends, nothing. Meanwhile, here I am with a great job, a loving husband, and a happy home. Who's the problematic one now, you toxic piece of trash? Lisa, please, I'm in real trouble here. I need help. No more chances, Jackson. How can you even think I would help you after all you did? This is it. One more call, and I'm taking serious action against you. Lisa, please, just wait. We're done for good, Jackson. It's been a month since that call with Jackson, and it's safe to say he's been nowhere in sight. Back when I was with Jackson, I thought love was this intense, burning, red kind of thing. He had me convinced that it had to be all fiery and passionate. But you know what? Now, with Joshua, I've learned that love is not like that at all. Real love is more like a warm, steady, golden glow. It's not about drama or control. It's about support and lifting each other up. But I can't help but think about all the men and women out there going through similar situations, stuck in a toxic cycle with their exes. I want to tell them this: break free from that pattern. Your ex might make you feel worthless and convince you there is nothing better out there for you, but let me be clear. There is. You deserve all the happiness, love, and success in the world. Just like I found it, you can too. It's not easy and it takes time, but you're worth it. Do not let anyone drag you down or make you doubt yourself. The president of the company passed away, and his funeral is the day after tomorrow. I received the sudden news 2 days ago from my boss at the head office, the same one who had relegated me. Needless to say, you must come to the funeral, he insisted, making sure I would attend. As expected, any employee would go to the funeral of the president of their company, but I was fed up with my boss's attitude as usual. Today, I left the suburban branch office where I had been relegated and arrived at the nearest train station to head to the funeral home. It looked like I would get there on time. As I was about to walk through the ticket gate, I saw a woman pushing a wheelchair, struggling at the ticket counter. She seemed to be seeking help from the station attendant, who appeared uncomfortable. Watching closely, I noticed the woman looked like a foreigner, and the girl in the wheelchair, probably of elementary school age, also looked foreign. I wondered if they were mother and daughter. Curious, I casually walked towards them. They were speaking Vietnamese. In fact, I had majored in Vietnamese as a second language in college. Even though it was my second foreign language, I had taken all the classes and even obtained a certificate. I also had experience working as a hall staff member at a Vietnamese restaurant, so thanks to a life surrounded by native Vietnamese speakers, my Vietnamese speaking ability was fairly good. With this background, I decided to talk to her in Vietnamese if she was in trouble. "Can I help you with something?" I asked. She looked surprised for a moment but immediately replied in Vietnamese, "Oh, can you speak Vietnamese?" I nodded, a little relieved that she understood. "Yes, I do. I studied at university. I can speak a little. I thought you might need some help." Her eyes lit up. "Thank you, you were so kind. Actually, I was having trouble figuring out how to buy a ticket. I tried to ask the station attendant, but he couldn't understand me at all. Since I can barely speak English, I didn't know what to do. Thank goodness there is a kind person like you. Could you please tell me how to buy a ticket?" "Oh, I see. That must have been hard. Of course, it's no problem. I'll show you at the ticket counter." I showed her how to buy the ticket, and we went through the ticket gate together. "Thank you so much. You were very helpful," they said, looking totally relieved. I was very glad that I could use what I'd learned to help others. No, not at all. "There's an elevator right there you can use," I said, pointing it out, but then realized, oh my, unfortunately, the elevator is out of order. "Oh dear, it looks like it's out of order," I noted. Hearing that, she became terribly upset. "Oh no, what am I going to do? I have something very important to do today." Her face, which had just brightened up, became gloomy again. I couldn't decide right away if I should carry the wheelchair up the stairs. Depending on the weight, it could take a long time, and I might not make it to the president's funeral in time. I thought about asking the station attendant for help by translating, but when I glanced at him, he was obviously avoiding eye contact with me. I didn't want to rely on those guys. Okay, I gotta do it, I thought. I didn't want to come this far and just abandon them. I made up my mind. If you want, I can carry your wheelchair up the stairs. Can you carry your daughter on your back? Yes, I can. Thank you, she replied happily. She picked up her daughter from the wheelchair, and I folded it up and carried it. It was quite heavy. Was it made in a foreign country or domestically? I had never carried wheelchairs before in my life, so I couldn't compare. I managed to carry it up the stairs. Are you all right? She repeatedly asked, even though she was also carrying her child on her back. I'm fine. I think she is heavier than the wheelchair, isn't she? I pretended to be calm and climbed the stairs. I'm fine. I'm used to carrying my daughter on my back, she smiled. We reached the landing in the middle of the stairs and decided to rest there. I'm sorry it's too late to ask you, but weren't you on your way somewhere? I thought you might be in a hurry. Yes, actually I'm in kind of a hurry. For a moment, I remembered my boss's face and answered with a smile. She suddenly realized, oh no, don't worry about us, you just go ahead. She said that, but there was no way I was leaving them in the middle of the stairs like this. There was absolutely no way she could carry this heavy wheelchair up by herself. No, it's okay. You're more important. Let me help you to the end, I insisted. I checked my watch. I could still make it to the funeral just in time. After a short break to regain some strength, I climbed the rest of the stairs, little by little. Hang in there, mister. Thank you. Her daughter cheered me on. Finally, we made it to the top. We made it. We made it, I exclaimed. I'm so glad. Thank you so much for your help. Thank you, she said, and the three of us shared the joy of reaching the platform. At that moment, we heard an announcement from the station. The train will be leaving soon. Oh no. I reflexively tried to run to catch the train, but the doors closed, and it left. Oh my God, I muttered. Without that train, I would miss the president's funeral and be late. I'm sorry, it's my fault you missed the train, she said, apologizing profusely. I didn't want to make them feel worse than they already did. It's going to be all right. I'll figure something out, I replied, smiling to reassure her. While waiting for the next train, I called my boss, but he didn't answer. He was probably busy. I was anxious and impatient, but also a little relieved. I put her daughter back in the wheelchair and finished my task. As we sat on the bench, I decided to ask the question that had been on my mind. Do you two live here? Actually, got married and just moved here, but things have been a bit. She trailed off, not wanting to elaborate. It's okay, you don't have to talk if you don't want to. I'm sorry for asking a private question. I quickly apologized. In the meantime, time was passing. The next train was in 15 minutes. I looked at the timetable and sighed involuntarily. The thought of my boss being angry with me again was depressing, partly because I would be late for the president's funeral, but also because I didn't want to see him after a while. Is it possible that there's something else bothering you besides being late? She asked, startling me with her insight. Normally, I wouldn't talk to a stranger about my private life, but I felt less tense and decided to speak little by little. Actually, I had an irrational thing happen to me at work, and I was transferred to a branch office near here. I had a stable job at the head office, I said. I'm sorry, that's very sad, she replied. I know this is not the kind of thing to tell someone you just met, but my boss puts all the blame on me, and that's how I ended up where I am now. Today, I have to face that boss, and that's why I was feeling a little depressed, I continued. I'm sorry to tell you this story that you may not want to hear, but I haven't had anyone to talk to about it until now. It's okay, you saved us. Let me at least listen to your story, she said with a sympathetic smile. I'm kind of embarrassed. I've never complained about work to anyone before, I admitted. I found myself talking about something I had been holding inside for a long time. I guess I wanted someone to listen. I was surprised that I couldn't stop talking. My boss didn't like me, so he intentionally did wrong things and put all the blame on me. He deliberately pissed off the president, telling him that I was to blame, so I was relegated to the suburban office. I was just about to build my career at the head office, I explained. I see. Thank you for telling me what you're going through. I wish I could help you, but sorry, I can't do anything, she mumbled sadly. No, don't worry, just think of it as one office worker's rant. I feel better just talking to someone, I said. I felt bad that I had burdened her. Trying to change the subject to something more cheerful, I said, actually, I have a dream. I want to make frozen foods for foreigners. Something authentic, something that would remind them of their homeland while living in this country. But that's not possible at the branch office where I am now. Food development can only be done at the head office. That's why I want to go back to the head office someday and make my dream come true. That's wonderful, that's wonderful. I'll support your dream, she said. While we were talking, the train arrived. I helped them get on, and coincidentally, we got off at the same station 2 stops away. Thank you for listening to my story. Now, excuse me, but I must hurry, I said, rushing towards the ticket gates. Thank you very much, thank you. They waved their hands and thanked me in English. When I arrived at the site, the funeral was nearly over. My boss was glaring at me while the priest was praying. I had messed up. My head hurt just thinking about what would happen next. I was trembling during the entire ceremony. Right after the ceremony ended and the coffin was placed in the hearse, my boss approached me. Hey, I have something to tell you. I need to talk to you. Yes, I replied. He took me to a private room, and the moment the door closed, he started yelling at me. Who do you think you are, you blinking fool? What are you doing showing up late for the president's funeral? I'm sorry. I was helping some foreigners at the train station, and I got delayed. I tried to explain. Helping people and foreigners is none of your business. Just leave such foreigners alone. He yelled so loudly that people outside the room could hear. The managing director and other employees rushed to the scene. What's going on here? The managing director asked. I thought it was inappropriate for him to be late for a funeral, so I scolded him, my boss said. I see. Being late is not good. So why were you late? The managing director asked me. Well, he said he was helping a foreigner, and I told him to leave that kind of thing alone. My boss interrupted. Just then, a young man who had been listening at the back of the crowd stepped forward. Wait a minute. What did you just say? The boss glared at the resolute young man. What is it suddenly? Excuse me, who are you? I am the son of the president of this company. It was my father's funeral today. I haven't been back in Japan for a long time, so you probably don't know who I am yet. I have decided to take over the company, he announced. Everyone looked surprised at the same time. I heard you speaking very loudly, so I had to listen to what you were saying. You seem to be blaming him for helping foreigners. I don't think that's a good thing. No, that's not what I meant. I was just warning him about being late for the funeral. My boss started to panic. I don't agree with blaming him because my wife is Vietnamese and she was saved by him, the president's son said, bringing forward the Vietnamese woman I had just met at the station. I was utterly shocked. I did not expect that she was the president's daughter-in-law. Our daughter has trouble with her legs, so she is in a wheelchair. When the two of them tried to take the train today, they didn't know how to buy a ticket. They tried to ask the station attendant but couldn't communicate because she can't speak English well. When they were both at a complete loss, he, who speaks Vietnamese, helped them buy a ticket. In addition, he willingly carried the wheelchair up the long stairs. He even helped them get on the train, even though he was in a hurry. That's what my wife told me. My wife, my daughter, and I are very grateful to him. It is outrageous to scold him for that, he said firmly. My boss shuddered. No, I didn't know that. I'm sorry, he stammered. The atmosphere was tense, but I felt a sense of relief knowing that my actions were understood and appreciated by someone who mattered. The next president was furious. Not only were you very rude to foreigners, but you also have the nerve to show up late for the funeral. Our company is planning to make more products for the international market. It's troubling to have people like you here. I don't think our company needs you. Oh no, please don't say that. My boss pleaded desperately. But no matter how much he begged, it didn't make any difference. I heard that you even cheated and blamed him, then kicked him out of the head office. You were fired. This can't be happening, my boss stammered, unable to accept what just happened. The next president gave my boss a cold look as he shook, then turned to me with kindness. Thank you for saving my wife and daughter. I was supposed to drive them here, but I had to leave early, so they had to take the train. My wife also told me why you were moved to the branch office. I can't allow such things to happen. When I become president, I will make sure the company values its employees' true abilities. He spoke passionately, then added, by the way, I heard you speak Vietnamese. If you're willing, I'd like you to develop food products for foreigners at the head office. I was extremely surprised. Are you sure? Of course I'm sure. We need talented people like you to develop our products. A dream I had almost given up on was coming true. I was so happy and surprised that I found myself in tears. When the new president took over, I returned to the head office, where I had longed to work. I was finally able to focus on developing food products for foreigners. We created authentic bibimbap for Koreans, hot pot sets for Chinese, and koshari for Egyptians, among others. There were many failures at first, such as difficulties in properly defrosting large products. However, through the team's concerted efforts and repeated trial and error, we successfully commercialized the products. Once we started selling, the products became big hits, one after another. Our company's sales steadily rose. "I'm so glad we entrusted you with this project," the president said, very pleased. Recognized for my achievements, I was promoted. Since that incident, I had become good friends with the president's wife and daughter, and they often took me out to dinner. I met her friend at a gathering later, and eventually, I married her. She was also Vietnamese, making ours an international marriage. Looking back, it felt like a strange twist of fate, but I was glad I took the plunge back then. Holding my baby, I resolved to do my best to make my wife and child happy. That is why I continue to work hard on product development. "You're the candidate for the next president," the president once said at a company party, quite drunk. I knew he was joking, but those words made me happy. No one else had ever been told anything similar, so I wondered if it was somehow special. I hope so, and I'm secretly encouraged by it. For the sake of the president who cares about me, and for the company, I want to continue making products that will be loved by many people. When I met Nancy's father to formally introduce myself for marriage, he looked down on me and suddenly started yelling. "You're a high school graduate, I hear." I won't let my daughter marry a high school graduate. Although I was somewhat prepared, it was still harsh to hear. I thought, what an unfortunate girl Nancy is. At the same time, I wanted to rescue her somehow. "Hey, you high school dropout, get out of here right now," he continued. "Understood, I'll leave," I said, and then called my secretary on the phone. After a while, my secretary entered the room. "Who are you?" Nancy's father asked. "I am Michael, and I turned 62 this year. Unfortunately, I'm still single. It's not that I was never interested in marriage. There were women I thought about marrying in the past, but we never made it to getting married and eventually broke up. Each time, I would dive back into my work, and before I knew it, I had reached this age. To be honest, now I'm more concerned about finishing up my time at the company rather than getting married. The company I'm currently with is performing quite poorly. Identifying the causes of the decline and turning things around is what I consider my final job. I joined this company 2 months ago, and I have finally gotten used to it, but the atmosphere of the company is pretty bad." "Good morning." "Oh, good morning." Her name is Nancy. She works in accounting at the company, and she's been helping me figure out solutions to the poor performance. She must be 32 this year. To me, she's like a daughter, very serious and incredibly helpful. Lately, I can't stop thinking about her. Sometimes she looks incredibly troubled. "What's wrong? Is something the matter?" I asked her. "Oh yeah, I'm fine," she replied. "You can always talk to me about anything." "Thank you." We always have these kinds of exchanges. A few days later, I had to go to another department, and it was late when I returned to accounting. Everyone had left, and the office was empty except for Nancy, who was still there. "What? Still working?" Asterisk, sniff. Asterisk, when I looked, I saw that Nancy was crying. "I'm sorry, what's wrong?" "Well, I might not be much help, but talking about it could make you feel better. Won't you tell me what's going on? I shouldn't trouble you with this." "Don't worry about it. It's the least I can do for all the help you've given me at work." With that, Nancy finally opened up. "I'm sorry to worry you. Sometimes I wonder what I'm living for. I'm scared to go home." "Did something happen at home?" When I said that, she began to speak quietly. Her parents were what you'd call toxic. It seems like her entire salary from this job is being siphoned off by her parents, especially Nancy's mother, who seemed quite greedy about money. "This month's paycheck is too small, isn't it? That's all of it. You could increase it by working overtime, right? Children are supposed to make their parents' lives easier. This amount won't ease anything. You're really useless." On payday, she was typically told things like this, and her entire paycheck was taken away. "And the president of this company is my father." What? I had yet to meet the president. I think my father only sees me as a tool of his own. According to her, Nancy's father likes to dominate, and even at 32, he checks her cell phone every day. Since the parents pay for the cell phone, They feel it's only natural they have the right to check it. Hand it over now. If she refuses to hand over the phone, if you don't hand it over, I'll cut off your phone, he threatens. Since Nancy's salary is entirely taken by her mother, she couldn't possibly pay the cell phone bill herself. He checks all her contacts in the phone, and if any man's names are saved, they are immediately deleted in a tyrannical fashion. If she comes home late, she's interrogated about where she was, who she was with, and what she was doing. It seems Nancy's father wants to keep her tied to the house. He wants her within his sight and making his life easier. Hearing this, I understood why she was so considerate. It made strange sense to me. I also began to understand why her father had her working in his company. If she's within sight, any man approaching her could be immediately deterred. Then why hasn't he said anything to me? Is it because of my age? Am I not considered a threat? Does he even realize I work at this company? All these questions started floating in my mind. Meanwhile, Nancy continued speaking. I don't have any freedom. It seems like I've always had to live for my parents. Has it always been like this since you were little? Yes, always. It seems this wasn't something that just started recently. Useless. I don't need you anymore. I'll throw you away. From a young age, Nancy was raised hearing things like this. Because of that, she did the household chores instead of her mother to feel needed. Nancy's mother can't do housework, and when Nancy tries to clean up, is that some kind of sarcasm? Nancy's mother would start raging if she stopped cleaning, and she'd be scolded for that too. As a child, she was troubled about what to do when her mother was in a bad mood. Her mother just wanted to yell, talking endlessly when angry and not listening to anything Nancy had to say. If Nancy ever tried to voice her opinion, it would set her mother off. Nancy had to keep saying yes until her mother was satisfied. I was a child, so I didn't know about the term toxic parents. I took everything my parents said as absolute, believing that everything that happened was my fault. I thought about leaving this world many times. How can I get some relief? If I were to leave this world, would anyone be sad? Even now, she finds herself thinking these thoughts. The painful expression she sometimes showed me now made sense. I see, it's been tough, huh? And still is, Nancy replied, a bit teary-eyed. I do have a dream, even someone like me. What kind of dream? It's been my dream since elementary school to live on my own, to live alone. You're thinking, is that all? Well, yeah. My parents see me as nothing more than a maid, a cash cow. I want to get away from such people. I want my own time. Is it wrong for me to feel this way? Not at all. And I think it'll come true soon. What? Hearing Nancy's story made me think about how unfortunate she was. At the same time, I wanted to somehow rescue her. You'll need to be ready to leave your parents, but can you do that? If you stay with your parents, Nancy, you'll be ruined. I have a plan. As I listened to Nancy, I explained the plan I had thought of. Really? Can I do that? Nancy seemed quite surprised by my plan. Yes, my plan was for us to pretend to get married so you could leave your home. They'll find out it's a lie soon enough. That's okay. It's after you cut ties with your parents. Given my age, Nancy's parents will definitely oppose it. If they oppose, you can just say you're cutting parental ties and leave. But I actually only have a high school diploma. My parents thought it wasteful to spend money on university, so they didn't let me go. What company would hire someone with just a high school diploma? Don't worry about that. I'm a high school graduate too, and there are plenty of companies that would hire someone like you, Nancy. I guarantee it. I had been working with Nancy for about 2 months. Seeing her work, it's hard to believe she learned accounting on her own. I was convinced she was a valuable asset. A few days later, the day came to meet Nancy's parents. Nancy had been worried ever since. It's up to you, Nancy. If you're really ready to cut ties with your parents, you'll be fine, I kept reassuring her. Entering Nancy's house, I greeted her parents. Both of Nancy's parents had a brash demeanor, nothing like Nancy. What brings you here today? Her father asked. Yes, I'm considering marrying Nancy. Don't joke with me. As soon as I said that, he began to yell. I've heard about you. You're a high school graduate, I hear. I won't let my daughter marry a high school graduate. Apparently, Nancy had told her father. That was exactly what I had anticipated. Nancy, you're being deceived by this high school dropout, aren't you? And how old are you? I'll be 62 this year. 62? Absolutely not. There's no way I can approve of a 62-year-old high school graduate. You must not be good for much anyway. What's good about a poor-looking man like that? I was somewhat prepared, but it was still harsh to hear. If you won't approve of the marriage, then we'll have to sever our family ties. Nancy, I won't allow you to leave home. You the high school dropout. Get out of here. Understood. I'm leaving, and I'm taking Nancy with me. Saying that, I called my secretary on the phone. After a while, the secretary came in. Who are you? President, are you back? Oh, President, there's no way this poor-looking high school dropout could be a president. Which company is this? Watch your mouth. Who do you think you're speaking to? It's unbelievable, but you don't know, do you? If you don't know, let me enlighten you. This man is the president of your parent company. There is no room for rudeness. I can understand why they wouldn't recognize me. After all, I only became the president 3 months ago. That's enough. I'm sorry, but could you help Nancy with her luggage? Even the president can be too subtle. You should have just told them straight, Nancy said. So, I'll be taking Nancy with me. Nancy's parents were frozen by the secretary's words. I had forgotten to tell Nancy as well, so she seemed quite surprised. Oh right, your company's performance has been so poor that I had to conduct an internal investigation. I'll decide what to do about it soon. What do you mean, decide what to do? Exactly what I said. What will happen to me? Are you more concerned about yourself than the company and your employees? From what I've seen, you have excellent employees, which surprised me. Despite that, there's no growth in performance. I've concluded that it's because you are too autocratic. You understand what I'm saying, right? Be prepared. That's ridiculous. You? What are you going to do? I don't want this. Can we do something about it? Do something like what? Maybe find a position at a related company? I can't do that as a high school dropout. Where's that energy you had just a moment ago? If you had the power you were showing while yelling at me, you could make it anywhere. But please, somehow, it's always about you, isn't it? I'm at a loss for words. I'm going back. If you need me, I'll be at the office. With that, I tried to leave Nancy's house in a panic. Nancy's mother came out. Nancy, what about your mother? Are you leaving me too? Have you forgotten all I've done to raise you, you ungrateful child? Just let me be free for once. Haven't I always done as you asked until now? Don't bother me anymore. What about the money? You'll send money home, right? I later learned that although Nancy had been handing over her entire paycheck, she had been given a small allowance. This allowance was barely enough to cover her basic personal needs. I've been giving you money faithfully every month, haven't I? Take care of your own living expenses. Isn't it natural for children to take care of their parents? You're abandoning that responsibility. Yes, that's why I'm saying I'm cutting ties. How am I supposed to live now? It seemed Nancy's parents had always lived selfishly. As long as they were comfortable and secure, that was all that mattered. Nancy was never included in their comfort. They never got involved in anything inconvenient or troublesome. All these inconveniences and troubles had been pushed onto Nancy. That's what led to this situation. I thought that these toxic parents would only be a hindrance to Nancy's future. A parent shouldn't be allowed to crush their child's future. I had told Nancy to be firm and clear in her convictions. From the conversations I've heard, Nancy's resolve seemed firm. Goodbye. I don't expect we'll ever meet again, so take care. With that, Nancy conveyed her message to her mother and came towards the car where we were waiting. It was the moment Nancy truly became free. Thank you so much. I feel incredibly relieved. Any regrets? None at all. It was the first time I had seen Nancy smile like that. I felt it was worth enduring the harsh things Nancy's parents had said to me. Even I was hurt by being spoken to like that. Afterward, we headed to the apartment where Nancy would be living. I had already arranged a lease for Nancy's apartment beforehand. I had also prepared a new job for her. Really, thank you for everything. But I was surprised to learn that you, Michael, are the president of the parent company. I wasn't hiding it. There just wasn't a need to bring it up. From now on, you walk your own path in life. If you have troubles, I'm here to help. Saying this, I parted ways with Nancy. A few days later, Nancy's father came to the office. I apologize for my behavior the other day. You can do whatever you like with that girl. Please don't give up on our company, he said. His attitude significantly changed from before. Doesn't he care about his own daughter? I thought about asking, but I refrained. Don't worry about your daughter. I'll support Nancy so she can live the life she desires. But as for the company, I informed Nancy's father that he would have to resign as president. In return, I promised to continue the business by covering the deficits. How about that? This way, the company can be saved and employees can be retained. That's good, isn't it? That is. Nancy's father's complexion rapidly changed. Oh, what's the matter? I have worked tirelessly for the company. I cannot accept this outcome. I thought you might say that. Did you think I knew nothing during my internal investigations at the subsidiary? I visited various departments and heard stories about the president. It seems you've been treating the company as your own personal property. The employees aren't here just for you. Even if I were you, I'd make the same decision. Nancy's father sank to his knees. What will you do? It might be best to comply gracefully. Abandoned by your daughter, haven't you reflected a bit? Stop looking down on people and using them. Nancy's father was completely dejected, but it didn't end there. He was also under suspicion for embezzlement. He must have been hoarding quite a sum for himself. How long he had been embezzling money would soon be discovered. He probably didn't want to lose his position, enjoying the perks as long as he could. But such times cannot last forever. A few weeks later, Nancy's father was taken away by the police. I believe the police will uncover everything and he will never be able to return to his former life. After having made so many people suffer, he must face the consequences. As for Nancy's mother, she disappeared around the same time her husband was taken by the police. Perhaps she realized she could no longer siphon money from her husband or daughter. I wondered if Nancy's mother might be holding on to the embezzled funds, but I decided to leave everything to the police. Just when everything seemed to have settled, one troubling thing occurred. When I returned home, Nancy was waiting at my doorstep. Welcome back. What? You came again? Haven't you had dinner yet? I came to cook. Honestly, I appreciate it, but I'm concerned about what the neighbors might think with such a young woman frequently entering my house. But you said you'd marry me, didn't you? No, that was just a lie to get you out of that situation. What? That's terrible. You played with my feelings. It felt like I was being completely toyed with. Aren't I too old for you? That doesn't matter. She didn't seem to care at all about what I was saying. I couldn't tell anymore what was serious and what was a joke. Lately, she's been coming over almost every day. After a few months, there I was, living with Nancy. I had given in to her insistence. Isn't there someone more suitable for you? I found myself saying things that sounded like a father. Please don't ever say that again. She would get angry when I said that. You finally have your freedom. You should enjoy your life. I am enjoying my life. Being with you, Michael, is my choice, she said and continued to take care of me diligently. Does it bother you? No, not really. I am actually quite grateful. But I want you to use your time for yourself. It is for myself. I want you to need me, Michael. Being with you, I feel at peace. When I'm with Nancy, people often think we're father and daughter. Perhaps sensing how I felt, Nancy said, You worry too much about what others think. The world isn't going to make us happy, right? I've decided to seize my own happiness. Honestly, I'm perplexed by Nancy, but I think it's not too bad. I guess this must be happiness, as I'm beginning to feel it. It was 15 years ago, back when I was in elementary school. April had just arrived, and we had a class shuffle. Our new teacher was a young woman. When lunchtime came, she turned to the girl sitting next to me and said, Katie, you haven't paid your lunch fee, so don't eat, okay? Katie, always wearing ragged clothes, was a skinny little girl. Her family was poor, and since the previous fall, her parents hadn't been paying the school lunch fee. I overheard some gossip and learned that she had been allowed to eat lunch the year before. Seeing her sitting there with no food on her desk, looking down, made me feel sorry for her. Since the teacher ate lunch in the same room, I couldn't secretly share my food with her. Instead, I left just the bread, wrapped it in a napkin, hid it in my desk, and gave it to Katie after lunch when the teacher left the room. You can eat this, I said. Really? Thank you, Jason, Katie replied. Back then, I was an outcast with no friends in the same class, but after that incident, I started talking to Katie. When I got home that day, I told my mom about Katie's situation. Mom, please, can you make a packed lunch for Katie? My mom responded, That poor child. If she can't eat lunch, it won't be good for her growth, and she probably can't concentrate on her studies when she's hungry. It's fine. I'm already making your dad's lunch every day, so adding one more portion won't make much difference. With that, she gladly agreed. The next day at lunch, I handed over the homemade lunch my mom had made. Katie's eyes widened in surprise. My mom said to give this to you. Is this a packed lunch? Yeah, I told her about you, and she said to give it to you. Really? Thank you, Jason. She hurriedly ate the lunch before the teacher returned. It turned out that Katie's house was in the same direction as mine, so from that day on, we decided to walk home together. While walking, Katie told me about her life. My dad doesn't work, he spends all our money on slot machines and horse races. My mom earns the money, but my dad takes it all. Because of this, they were struggling and even in debt. Seeing her in the same tattered clothes every day, I felt sorry for her. Our classmates just watched her from a distance. Neither of us had friends. After that, we started meeting up in the morning and going to school together. Some classmates teased us, saying, "Are you two dating or something?" But we tried not to let it bother us. I had always been bad at talking to people, but for some reason, I felt at ease talking to Katie. I didn't realize it, but I was lonelier than I thought. Not having any friends, I was really happy to be able to talk to her. On our way to and from school, we talked about many things: our families, our favorite foods and animals, homework, and TV shows we watched the previous night. I found out she loves cats. She couldn't have one at her house but enjoyed visiting the nearby park where stray cats often gather. "My family has a cat. Want to come over and see it?" "Really? Sure." When I brought her to my house after school that day, my mom warmly welcomed her. When our mixed breed cat showed up, Katie's eyes sparkled with delight. "How cute. What's its name?" "It's Mary. Mary, come here." Katie looked so happy cuddling the cat, playing with toys, and feeding it treats. Seeing her radiant smile, which she didn't show at school, made me happy too. In the blink of an eye, it was evening, and my mom prepared dinner for Katie as well. "Katie, can you give me your home phone number? I'll call your folks and let them know you're here." With that, my mom called her house. During the call, she seemed deeply engrossed in the conversation. After that day, Katie began having dinner at our house every night. Apparently, her mom often worked late, and her dad, who was at home, didn't do any housework. As a result, their dinner time was always late. With her parents' permission, my mom started looking after her meals. After school, Katie and I would do her homework and play with the cat until dinner. However, about a year into this routine, Katie had to move. Her parents divorced, and she decided to go with her mom to live with her maternal grandparents in Texas. Before they left, Katie and her mom came over to say goodbye. "I can't thank you enough for all that you've done for Katie. We'll never forget your kindness," her mother said, bowing to my mom. "Oh, please, it's okay. Please raise your head. We help each other out during tough times. Don't give it another thought," my mom replied. She was a person of strong principles and kindness, and I have tremendous respect for her. I can't recall the conversation I had with Katie that day, but I haven't seen her since. We exchanged Christmas cards every year, but that also ceased after 5 to 6 years. Then I graduated from college and started working at a precision machinery manufacturer. I was assigned to sales, and it's been 3 years now. Taking over clients from seniors and establishing new ones, I now handle numerous major accounts. "Good morning, Jason," my colleague Mike from the next desk greeted me. "Good morning. Tomorrow we've got a meeting with AB Electronics. It's a big deal that's vital for the company. You pumped and prepared?" "Yes, I'll have it ready for review later." As we talked, a secretary called out to Mike. "Mike, there's a call for you from AB Electronics." Picking up the phone, Mike's face turned pale rapidly. "What? How could this?" "Yes, I see. I'm terribly sorry. Right away, please, can you give us one more chance?" "Wait, hold on." After hanging up, he just stared blankly, still holding the phone. "What happened?" I asked. Turning to me, he said, "Jason, you gave the wrong time to AB Electronics for our meeting, didn't you? They thought the meeting was yesterday. They're furious that we stood them up. This deal is toast. It's your fault." "What? But wasn't it you who communicated the schedule to them?" "What, are you trying to pin this on me?" I wanted to throw his words right back at him. To begin with, I hadn't communicated the schedule to the client at all. Mike had arranged the schedule and then informed me about it later, and yet he was trying to blame it on me. Mike reported the matter to his boss, and our supervisor Johnson went to apologize on his behalf. However, they wouldn't listen, and in the end, the deal with AB Electronics fell through. When Johnson returned, he said to me, "Jason, what have you done? Because of you, the crucial deal we staked our company's future on has been ruined. How are you going to make this right?" "But sir, it wasn't me who informed them about the schedule. It was Mike." "Enough. No excuses. You've caused harm to the company. Maybe you should consider resigning." That's something Johnson always says when he's angry. "Wait, I really don't want to quit. then bring in a contract worth the same amount as the machine we were going to sell to AB Electronics within 3 days, or you're fired. How could I possibly secure such a deal in just 3 days? I was at a loss for words after hearing Johnson's ultimatum, but then I remembered something. There was a client who was currently considering purchasing the same machine we were planning to sell to AB Electronics. They always tried to haggle the price down, constantly negotiating for discounts. I'd almost given up, thinking they had no intention of buying, but now I had to somehow close the deal with them. I quickly revised the quotation and set an appointment with the client. Upon arriving at their company, a man named Kevin assisted me. "I've brought a new quotation today," I said, handing him the quote. Kevin scrutinized it. "Can't you go a little lower?" "I really can't go any lower. We've adjusted the price several times already," I pleaded, putting on a distressed look. "Please, Kevin, I'm sure our equipment will be very beneficial to your company. We'll even include regular maintenance." Kevin pondered, crossing his arms. "I get what you're saying, but at this price, my superiors might not approve. I personally want to purchase it, but how about I explain the benefits directly to your boss, maybe over a meal or something?" "That might be difficult. My boss is pretty busy." "I'm begging you, Kevin. Please just give me a chance to discuss it over dinner," I pleaded desperately. "The machine sells for tens of thousands of dollars. For our company, the cost of a dinner would be insignificant compared to the sale." "All right, but my boss is out right now. I'll get back to you another day." "That's fine, thank you so much." Kevin saw me out of the conference room. Just then, the elevator opened and an older man entered the office. "Supervisor, I wanted to see you. Do you have a moment?" Seeing him, Kevin immediately approached. So this is Kevin's superior, I thought. Kevin explained the situation to the supervisor, but to my surprise, the supervisor began to shout angrily. "Trying to win us over with a dinner? We've told you countless times if we can't afford it, we can't buy it. If you can't offer a better price, then just leave and don't come back." Did I do something so wrong to be yelled at like this? While I was still in shock, Kevin whispered to me as he nudged me towards the exit. "I'm sorry, he is just in a bad mood today. He always lashes out like this when he's upset." It seems the supervisor is quite a difficult character. But without his approval, we won't be able to finalize the deal. If I don't land this contract, I'm going to lose my job. What should I do? As I was racking my brain, I heard the sound of heels clicking down the hallway. "Wait, supervisor." I turned around to the sound of a young woman's voice. There stood a beautiful woman in a business suit. "Watson, what's up?" She quickly approached the puzzled-looking supervisor. "I've reviewed the documents too, and I believe that equipment from that company would be valuable for us. Please consider purchasing it." She looked straight into the supervisor's eyes as she spoke. "Well, if you say so, Watson." Kevin moved forward with the contract process right away. Supervisor then turned to me and said, "That's what I was saying." I was absolutely gobsmacked for a moment. I had no idea what had just happened. "So you're saying you'll make the purchase?" "Yes. Jason can't say no when the boss's daughter asks now, can we?" "Boss's daughter?" As I looked at her, she smiled and said, "Jason, long time no see. Don't you remember me?" Even though she said that, I didn't recall knowing any Watson, but as I continued to gaze into her face, it felt somewhat familiar. "Wait, who are you again?" I asked. She spoke up again. "Do you remember me as Katie?" "Katie." Oh, I realized she was talking about the same Katie I used to walk to and from school with and hang out with at my place during grade school. She had changed so much I didn't recognize her. Wow, it's been like 15 years, hasn't it? Yeah, so nostalgic. I saw your name on the business card attached to the documents and thought it might be you." "Really? But Watson." "Actually, my mom remarried when I was in high school, and I took on the name Watson." "Wow, really? Hey Jason, instead of just standing here chatting, want to go out for a drink tonight?" "Sure, sounds good." Katie and I exchanged contact info and planned to meet for drinks after work. When I got back to the office and reported the good news, my supervisor was taken aback. "You really got the contract?" "Yes, we haven't signed the papers yet, but we got the green light." "Great job, Jason." Supervisor was thrilled. Looking over at my colleague, Mike, he seemed uneasy at his desk. After wrapping up work for the day and heading to the bar for our meetup, I found Katie already waiting. "Thanks for today. You saved me. I didn't get fired because of you." "What are you talking about?" As I filled her in, she was sympathetic. It's terrible for a senior to put the blame on a junior like that, huh? Well, thanks to you, the deal went through, so I'm really grateful. Seriously, thanks. Upon hearing my gratitude, Katie shyly smiled. I'm honored I could help. To be honest, I've always been grateful to you for everything. We lost touch after I moved, but I'm glad we could reconnect like this. According to Katie's story, when she was in high school, her mother divorced and began dating the man who was then the manager of the office where she worked. They eventually got married. However, a few years later, Katie's stepfather's father, the CEO of the New York headquarters, retired, and Katie's stepfather had to take over his position. Their whole family moved to the city. You could have let me know when you moved back. Sorry, but weren't you the one who stopped replying to my New Year's cards first, Jason? Did I? Yes, so I thought maybe you found a girlfriend and I didn't want to intrude. Turns out I never did get a girlfriend. Really? No girlfriend? Nope, none. Well, maybe our meeting here is fate. If you're okay with it, would you like to date me? I was taken aback by her sudden confession and was rendered speechless for a moment, but it wasn't that I disliked the idea. I was actually really happy. Back in elementary school, being around her always made me happy, and whenever she laughed, I felt joy. I remembered that feeling. Of course, I'd love to. I extended my right hand to her, and she gently took it. Really? I'm so happy. This is how we started dating. 2 years later, I proposed, and we got married. Mary, dinner's ready, Katie called, and our cat responded with a soft meow. Seeing her play with our cat, she seemed just like old times. Katie had faced many challenges growing up, but from now on, I wanted to be by her side and make her happy. Hello everyone, my name is Miranda. I'm here to share the story of how my daughter and I sought revenge against my husband. The trouble centers around a major company that my husband used to own. I say used to because at this moment, neither is the company flourishing, nor is he the owner anymore. If you want to know how that came to be, follow this story closely. I have always been a hard-working woman. My parents were poor and took on the toughest jobs to make ends meet. I grew up in poverty and attended a public school, but I never complained. I worked hard and earned excellent grades. Upon graduating, I received an amazing scholarship for a business degree. My dream come true. It was while studying that I met my husband, Jordan. Like me, he was majoring in business, and we bonded over our shared ambition to start our own company. Eventually, we became close and started dating. He was an amazing boyfriend and later a good husband. After graduating from college, both Jordan and I landed high-paying jobs. However, once we got engaged, Jordan left his job to start his own company. Since he lacked the funds to launch a business, I decided to support him financially. Jordan, I said, I know you really want to build a company. I want you to follow your dreams. You can quit your job and start your company now. But I don't have the money, Miranda. If I don't work, where will the capital come from? Besides, I have to support myself. I will take care of everything, Jordan. With my salary, I can support both of us financially. I'll use my savings so you can start immediately. You don't have to worry about anything. Really, Miranda? You'll do that for me? God, I am so lucky to have you. I was serious about supporting him, and I did much more than that. For over 25 years, I worked for his company without having any stake in it. It was entirely his. I helped him financially and sacrificed my savings while he was building his empire. I even helped out at work after finishing my own job. Through my networking efforts, I provided Jordan with a significant clientele. He managed the internal team and daily operations, and gradually, the company became successful. I quit my job and took a position at his company to help him out. Together, we made our dream come true. We were happy, both professionally and in our married life. However, things didn't stay that way for long. The trouble began when I gave birth to our daughter, Mona. I could tell that Jordan was disappointed. Jordan, what's wrong? You don't seem very happy. It's not important, Miranda. It's just that I wanted a son. I was hoping for an heir for my company. Our daughter can be your heir, Jordan. We're both here to guide her. She'll be perfect. Don't worry about this. Jordan didn't argue further, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. Despite my best efforts to alleviate his concerns, they never went away. Things got even worse when his sister gave birth to a boy named Taylor. Jordan was thrilled and spent a lot of time with him. While I was happy that he finally got to do boy things with someone, I never imagined he would end up neglecting our daughter because of it. Whenever Mona and Taylor got into trouble, Mona always received the scolding. Jordan and his sister dismissed Taylor's actions with boys will be boys. I had numerous arguments with Jordan about it, but he saw nothing wrong with what he was doing. One day, Mona came to me and asked, "Mom, why doesn't Dad love me? Is it because I'm a girl?" "Mona, dear, why are you thinking like this? That's not true at all. Your dad loves you very much." But Taylor said Dad doesn't love me. Dad likes him better. He plays with him all the time and gives him lots of attention. Darling, Taylor isn't telling the truth. Don't listen to him. Your dad loves you, Mona. Just then, Jordan and Taylor walked in, holding hands and smiling at each other. For some reason, it made my heart go cold. Taylor approached us and said, "I'm not lying, Miranda. Jordan does love me more. He's told me that many times. I just told Mona today." "Taylor, that's a very mean thing to say. Jordan loves both of you. There's no reason to hurt Mona like that." "Stop scolding him, Miranda. He's just a boy. He loves me and doesn't want to share. There's no reason to scold him. He said nothing wrong. I do love him a lot. Mona needs to be less sensitive about everything." Yes, Jordan comforted Taylor instead of her own daughter. Mona cried silent tears while holding onto my dress. From that day, I started to resent my husband little by little. We fought a lot over his favoritism, but he never listened to me. I stayed with him because of my daughter. Despite everything, Mona loved her dad and wanted his undivided love. She worked hard to earn it, always telling people that her dad was her idol and role model. Sadly, Jordan never valued her immense love for him. Years passed and the favoritism never stopped. Mona tried even harder to impress her father. She was a good kid with great grades and never received any complaints from school. However, Taylor was a spoiled child who constantly looked down on people. Yet in my husband's eyes, he was always the better one. When Mona graduated from high school and wanted to pursue a business degree, Jordan didn't pay much attention. However, when Taylor asked us to fund his business degree, he jumped at the opportunity and paid for it entirely out of our pocket. Mona managed to graduate from college and secure a good job in my husband's industry. Meanwhile, Taylor dropped out and spent his time and money on video games. Instead of reconsidering his stance, Jordan gave Taylor a job at our company, but he never offered Mona a position. Taylor wasn't a stellar employee. He often slacked off, making others, including Jordan, do his work. Seeing all this, Mona was heartbroken yet determined to win her dad's approval. I'd also worked hard at the company, striving to make it successful and leave a legacy for my daughter. Never in my wildest dreams had I imagined that my efforts would go in vain. When Jordan and I were in our 60s, he suddenly decided he wanted to retire and spoke about handing over the business soon. In my mind, I thought Mona would inherit the company as our daughter and legal heir. However, that never happened. One day, Jordan came home from work looking very happy and called Mona over, saying he had something important to discuss. I thought he would finally ask her to take over the company. Instead, he announced something despicable with a grin on his face. "I transferred the business to Taylor today," he said. "We signed all the papers, and he'll be taking over the company next month. I wanted to let you both know." "You have to be kidding me. You gave our company to Taylor. Are you insane? You never even discussed this with me. And what about Mona? Did you actually overlook your own daughter? Mona is a woman and can't handle the hardships of running a business. She's not fit for the company. Taylor has been with me for a while and is more suited, so I made this decision." "God, you gave the company to Taylor? He can't even handle basic tasks. I've been working in this sector for a long time, and you think I'm unworthy." "Taylor isn't a pro at this yet, but he'll learn. He's a man, so it won't be difficult for me to groom him for the role. It would have been impossible for you even with experience." "How dare you say that, Jordan? I'm a woman, and I helped you set up this business. I spent 25 years of my life supporting you and this company. You've overlooked my feelings as well." Jordan's blatant sexism and disregard for both Mona's and my contributions were the final straws. It was clear he would never see us as equals, and I knew I had to do something to change the course of our lives. "Look, Miranda, I'm grateful for your help, but this company is in my name. Only I have the right to decide what happens to it. My decision is final, and everything is set. There is no room for arguments." I was reeling from Jordan's words. It felt like my entire world had come crashing down. I had spent half of my life working tirelessly for the company, all for my family and in the hope that one day, my daughter would inherit it. Jordan disregarded everything and handed the company to his nephew. I should have seen this coming, but I was naive enough to believe Jordan wouldn't do it. I was wrong. He casually handed over our blood and sweat to his nephew, a complete loser who couldn't hold a job. Mona was also exceptionally heartbroken. She had spent years trying to earn her father's approval and worked hard to prove she was capable of handling the company's affairs. Jordan wiped out years of her hard work with a single decision. We were completely cheated out of our fair share, and it felt surreal. Jordan's nonchalant attitude only made things worse. That night, Mona came to me alone and broke down in tears. Seeing her in pain crushed me inside. Anger started to bubble up in my heart, and I made a plan. I was going to destroy Jordan's business. I would get my revenge against him for me and Mona. I encouraged my daughter to start her own company in the same industry. You need to make use of your skills and open your own company, I said. I know you have learned a lot over the years. Your experience will help you immensely. You don't need Jordan's company. You will make your own. I will help you as I helped him. Mom, I'm not sure, Mona replied. I mean, I always did everything under your guidance. How can I be confident about a new venture? Mona, you are a pro now. I have full faith in you. Your dad only became so successful because I invested money and helped him navigate business decisions. Without me, he wouldn't have secured so many clients. But will it be okay to go against Dad? I know if I start a new company, many clients would leave him. Won't you be mad at me? You did put a lot of effort into Dad's company. I know it's like your baby. You have my full support, Mona. Your dad used us to build his clientele. If he doesn't care about our feelings, you don't need to either. I could tell that slowly. I was getting through to her. She was super upset at her dad, feeling used and discarded simply because she was a woman. The fact that Taylor gloated about taking over the company also fueled the fire. Since Jordan gave away the company without consulting me, I was going all out to destroy him. I would help my daughter become even more successful than her father. I also knew that I would divorce my husband. However, that would have to wait. First, I needed to help Mona set up her company. Since retiring, Jordan rarely paid any attention to his company. He was content banking on his shares and enjoying the fruits of my labor. Mona had also stopped speaking to her father, and I rarely interacted with him, so he had no idea Mona had even opened a new company. Gradually, word spread about Mona's company. I shared what Jordan had done and why I was supporting Mona instead. People were shocked by Jordan's blatant favoritism and became reluctant to do business with him. Additionally, they were skeptical of working with Taylor, given his lack of experience. When they heard I was helping Mona run her business, they preferred to work with us. As I mentioned before, all these clients had joined our old company due to my efforts. Jordan's company started losing clients at an alarming rate. He was confused about why his shares were dropping rapidly. When Taylor frantically informed Jordan about what was happening, he finally came to his senses. Mona has started a new company, Jordan, Taylor said. She is competing with us now. She's the reason we've lost so many clients. You need to do something. What? That's impossible. Mona can't open a business. She is a woman. A woman cannot just open a big business and become successful like that. No, Jordan, it's true. Your daughter has opened a company. Look at this. Our clients have mentioned they no longer want to work with us because Miranda left and is supporting Mona instead. Some clients even said their colleagues mentioned that Mona was way better at the job, so they decided to leave as well. No, that's impossible. This is a man's job. How can they rely on Mona so much? She can never be as good as me and you. She's not a man. You might want to rethink that, Jordan. As you can see, Mona is doing much better than you, even though she just started. Plus, you keep forgetting one thing. It was me who helped you get more clients, so it's natural you will lose them if I start supporting someone else. How can you do this to our company, Miranda? We built this together. Don't you have any remorse for destroying us? Stop saying us, Jordan. Even after I helped you build the company, you overlooked me and gave it to Taylor. You never once consulted me about your decision. Now you and he can figure out how to save your company. I said that and immediately left. They kept calling for me and asking me to talk, but I didn't listen. While Taylor and Jordan were busy discussing what they could do, I packed my bags and left for my daughter's house. She knew about my plans to divorce Jordan and was supporting me. When I arrived at her house, she already had a room prepared for me. When Jordan noticed I had left and taken some of my things, he started blowing up my phone. First, his messages were filled with demands for me to come home, then with rants about how I was destroying his life and hard work. I read every message but didn't reply. I didn't answer his calls or respond to his voicemails. A few days passed and Jordan didn't come to Mona's house to talk things out with us. Instead, he was busy trying to use his brains and do some damage control at his company. However, he soon realized that it was too late. Even employees started to quit since Mona's company offered better pay and guaranteed a steady cash flow from her growing clientele. Many high-ranking employees left the old company and joined us instead. About 2 weeks later, Jordan did show up at Mona's door just after my lawyer had served him with divorce papers. He came and said, "Miranda, Mona, please don't do this to me. I am your family, and so is my company. Have some mercy on me. Mona, I have no problem with you starting the company, but please don't take away my clients. We will go under if you don't stop." "Why should I care about you and your company, Dad?" Mona replied. "You made it clear that I was not a part of it. And you made it clear I was no part of it either," I added. "You don't get to come here and make demands, Jordan." "Look, I know I messed up, but I only did what I thought would be best for the company," he pleaded. "And that meant handing over your power to your useless nephew who doesn't have any concrete knowledge of running businesses." "That makes total sense, Dad," Mona retorted. "You made it clear back then that I didn't deserve the company because I was a woman, and you ignored Mom's perspective on this because she is a woman." "I'm sorry, Mona. Please, guys, just tell me how I can make this right. I don't want to divorce Miranda. Mona, I don't want to destroy our relationship. I love you guys." "Those are lies, Jordan. You are only here because of your company. If you had even a little respect for us and our hard work, you would never have gone behind our backs. Hell, even 2 weeks ago, you said it's impossible for Mona to have a successful company." "The joke's on you, Dad. With Mom's help and my skills, I'm all set to have an even bigger and better company than you guys. Please don't do this." "Fine, if you want to destroy Taylor and the company, then go ahead. I guess I deserve that, but please don't abandon me. I need you guys. You are my family." "There is no use crying now, Jordan. You made your choices and we made ours. We don't have to have any kind of relationship with you. We are done," Mona said, outright disowning her dad and kicking him out. Jordan begged and pleaded, but we didn't hear him out. He had lost all his chances and wouldn't be getting another one. Both Mona and I were heartbroken over what had happened. It was a big blow, especially since the betrayal came from the one closest to us. Months passed and neither Mona nor I relented. I divorced Jordan and ended up getting the house. Meanwhile, Jordan chose to keep the company, still holding on to the hope of restoring his reputation and clientele. I knew the business better than him and could tell that it would never stand again. Taylor was a lousy boss with no business sense. All he did was shout at his employees and lay down inhumane rules. There were numerous complaints about the internal workings of the company, and many people left their jobs. Currently, it is standing on a very shaky foundation, and the future looks bleak. Jordan begged me and Mona to stay in touch. Mona outright told him that he was no longer welcome in her life. I stopped speaking to Jordan long ago, but he still tries to reach out. Mona and her fiancé have taken over their company, and everything is running smoothly. I am still a major investor and own many shares, so I am set for life. I plan on retiring and buying a house by the beach in a few years. For us, the future holds a lot of promise, while Jordan and Taylor are stuck in the ruins of the past. On that significant day, I found myself standing before my father's grave. My father had been the CEO of a major company, and after his death, my brother-in-law Kyle inherited both the company and a substantial fortune. In stark contrast, all I received was an old mini truck. Kyle, flaunting his newfound wealth, mockingly remarked, "With this, I've got the company and the entire estate in my grasp. That mini truck suits you." Yet to me, that mini truck was more than just a vehicle. As I looked at it fondly and started the engine, I noticed a destination already set on the navigation system. "What's this?" I wondered. With a firm yet gentle grip, I began to drive. My name is Jack Nicholson. I am a 44-year-old tutor, now standing before a large coffin where my father rests peacefully. My relationship with him had always been complicated. He built a construction company from scratch, but I chose a different path, leaving home right after university to become a teacher, fulfilling a childhood dream. This decision led to many heated arguments, and for a long time, we barely spoke. Despite our disagreements, I never hated my father. I had my own dreams to follow and couldn't give them up to run the family business, even though I felt a strong duty as the eldest son. Guilt weighed on me for not meeting my father's expectations, keeping me from visiting my parents' home. My mother relied on my sister Lauren to update my father about my life. Lauren and her husband often sent expensive gifts or arranged trips for my father's birthday or their anniversary, pretending they were from me. Each time, Lauren would encourage me, saying, "I wish you and Dad could talk directly. He's just trying to be strong. Deep down, he must be feeling lonely." I often thought about Lauren's words and would just shake my head. One day, I got the sad news that my father had cancer. When I heard this, I quickly quit my job and returned to where my family lived. I realized that what really mattered was life itself, and the past arguments with my father seemed so small. I decided to move back to my hometown, teach at a local school, and take care of my sick father. At first, my father was shocked to see me return, but he eventually accepted it quietly. I didn't say much either. I just stayed by his side and took care of him, helping him whenever he needed it. He would thank me softly, and those words brought me some peace. Sadly, my father's fight with his illness ended. The last chapter of his life closed quietly with me, Lauren, and our mother by his side. We couldn't know what he was thinking in his last moments, but we hoped his soul was at peace. Even though we expected it, losing him deeply affected us all. My mother, Lauren, and even my young nephew, Peter, were all very sad and cried. The only one who didn't show any emotion was my brother-in-law, Kyle. During the funeral preparations, he coldly asked, "Did he finally die, huh?" Hearing that, I was proud of myself for staying calm and not reacting angrily to Kyle. Instead, I focused on planning my father's funeral, keeping myself busy to distract from the pain. I ignored Kyle's harsh words and made sure everything for the funeral was done right. Kyle and I had never gotten along well, and our relationship only worsened over time. But despite everything, I kept my focus during this tough time. I first met Kyle when he was a skilled worker at my father's company, and I really respected his abilities. It felt like I had gained a real brother when Kyle married my sister Lauren. He was 5 years older than me and seemed like a role model. Before they got married, I often asked him for advice on various problems, and he always listened with understanding. One of our big discussions was about whether I should join the family business. Kyle would say, "A son should live his own life. Jack, you have your own path. No one knows which choices in life are the best, so the most important thing is to make choices you won't regret later." Encouraged by his words, I switched from business school, where I was studying management, to the Faculty of Education, where I truly wanted to study. As time went on, Kyle and Lauren got married and started their life together. 22 years passed, and the distance between my father and me grew wider. I moved on with my life, missing the chance to close that gap. But when I heard about my father's illness, I dropped everything and rushed home. Kyle, who once greeted me warmly, had changed. He now seemed uncomfortable around me. When we were alone, Kyle would say coldly, "You came back in a hurry when you heard he was sick, didn't you? But no matter what, you won't inherit anything." His words caught me off guard, and I struggled to respond. "What do you mean?" "Don't act like you don't know. It might be a coincidence, but even if you now want to run the company, it's already decided who will be the next leader." His harsh words shocked me, and I replied louder than I intended, "No, that's not it. I did come back for the company. I realized I hadn't been a good son and wanted to apologize to Dad, even if it's late." Kyle dismissed me. "I don't need your fancy talk. It sounds like something from a TV drama. Lori likes that kind of stuff. But were all those gifts you sent just a way to look good in front of him?" "That's absolutely not true." I tried to explain, but Kyle had already made up his mind and wasn't interested in believing me. His words also seemed like a slight against Lauren, and for the first time, I felt a deep divide between us. Ever since that incident, I started to feel really upset with Kyle. He began to mock me openly. "No matter how much you try to win him over, that time has passed. Don't make me laugh. Go back to where you belong and take care of your troubled students," he would say. At first, I thought deeply about how I appeared to others and how they saw me, but Kyle's words showed he was more concerned about himself than our father. His behavior often seemed disrespectful to both his father-in-law and his wife, Lauren. I started to believe that Kyle had married Lauren mainly to get closer to my father's company and wealth. He rarely visited my father when he was ill and didn't help take care of him. Now, all I could do was work as hard as possible to protect the company my father had built. Kyle always sounded polished, but he really just wanted to avoid problems. On weekends, he would go play golf, claiming it was for business. He hardly ever took care of his own son. He said he wanted his son to learn many skills to eventually take over the business, but he left all the driving and housework to Lauren. When Lauren showed a bit of unhappiness about this, Kyle would passionately take her hand and say, "I'm giving my all for his sake. Now is the time to produce results by any means necessary. Let's overcome this trial together." Lauren found it hard to stand up to him and usually just nodded, even though she seemed reluctant. Kyle was good at acting like the perfect husband in front of Lauren, so it's no surprise she believed him. He showed his true self to me, probably because he thought I was like him. I eventually got used to Kyle's mocking, and it didn't bother me as much. However, when our beloved father passed away, I was heartbroken. I felt a deep sadness and emptiness. Although Kyle seemed upset about our father's worsening health, I couldn't shake the feeling that he had been waiting for this moment. This thought made me very sad and angry. After our father died, Kyle inherited most of our father's large fortune. Even though he was just a son-in-law, he had the same rights to the inheritance as Lauren and me. According to my father's will, he got most of the shares of the company and a lot of wealth. This unexpected turn of events left me speechless. Even though I was my father's biological child, I had thought the inheritance would be split fairly among the three of us. But instead, Kyle got almost everything. All I received was an old mini truck that my father once loved. In public, Kyle seemed surprised, but alone with me, he laughed and said, "You came all the way from the city to this small town, took care of him day and night, and all you got is this little truck, huh? What an ironic end. Now the company is mine, and you're left with just this mini truck as your inheritance. It's like a comedy." As he left the room with a smirk, I felt empty inside, holding the mini truck keys tightly. The cold metal made me face the harsh reality. My family tried to cheer me up. "Keep your head up." He had his reasons. He didn't mean to upset you. That truck was something Dad always loved. It was his favorite vehicle. He surely cared about you. Despite their kind words, I was too hurt to respond. I knew that what you inherit doesn't measure a father's love. But the fact that Kyle, who seemed to be waiting for my father to die, got almost everything was deeply insulting. It wasn't about the money. It was the pain of seeing my father's hard work go to such a man. I felt powerless to change the situation. Clutching the truck key, I decided to take care of the mini truck, the only thing my father left me. It seemed to hold a deeper meaning. I hoped that cleaning the truck might help me sort out my feelings. I used a hose to carefully wash the truck and then sat in the driver's seat where my father used to sit. Starting the engine, I noticed something unusual on the navigation system. It was displaying a single thick blue route instead of just showing my location. That's odd. Why is there a destination set on the navigation system? I wondered. This usually only happens when a specific road is being followed. When I checked the destination on the screen, it showed only coordinates, not a specific place. It would take about an hour's drive. Wanting to go for a drive in the mini truck, I didn't think too much about it. I put the truck in first gear and left the house. An hour later, during the pleasant drive, I arrived at what seemed like a home. It was a surprise. In front of me was a small, modest house, quite different from the larger homes in my hometown. It felt warm and inviting. The area was quiet, and I couldn't see or hear anyone else around. I got out of the truck and stood in front of the house, feeling a bit confused. There were no signs to indicate what this place was, but it seemed the navigation system had brought me here for a reason. With some hesitation, I rang the doorbell. As the door slowly opened, the person I saw was the last one I expected. "My mom? I've been waiting, Jack. Come in, dear," she said. "Why are you here, Mom? And how come this place was set in Dad's navigation system?" I asked. "I will explain everything, but first come inside and relax," she replied. Following her inside, I found the interior simple yet cozy, with just the essentials. My mom made some tea and started to explain in a calm voice. "Actually, this was your father's secret hideout." A hideout. I was surprised. I've never heard about Dad having a place like this. "This place is our secret spot. We came here when we needed our own space or when we wanted some peace and quiet. If we ever had a small argument, our rule was to come here to cool off." "You didn't know about it, did you?" she continued. "No, I didn't," I replied, still trying to absorb this new information. "And this," she said, handing me a brown envelope. "This is something your father wanted you to have." The envelope was slightly bulging, as if something important was packed inside. I decided to read the letter addressed to me. "Jack, I have caused you a lot of trouble and made you endure unbearable hardships over the years. I am truly sorry from the bottom of my heart. The letter began. It was filled with my father's reflections on his past mistakes and his deep gratitude toward me. He wrote, "Your mother often tells me that it was your choice to leave home, and a son has the right to choose his own path in life. We are both stubborn, but when you came back after I fell ill, it was a wonderful surprise for me. Although I couldn't express it well because I'm not good at showing my feelings, I am deeply grateful to you for supporting and taking care of the family." This was the first time I heard such heartfelt words from my father, and it made me very emotional. The letter also mentioned Kyle. To tell the truth, my distrust towards Kyle grew over time. He's good with words and makes people feel comfortable, but I could see his true nature. I suspected his sneaky behavior around the house was his way of trying to claim ownership. I was too tired from work and taking care of you all to notice his cunning actions. But now, knowing Kyle as I do, I believe these suspicions were correct. The letter continued, "I have no intention of giving the company to you, but if something unexpected happens, I have left a significant amount of money with your mother. This is to ensure that you and Lauren will not be in need. Please accept it." After finishing the letter, I looked up at my mother. She said nothing but looked at the brown envelope. I hesitated, then reached for it and checked its contents, confirming everything was in my mother's name. She began to speak firmly. "If I transfer the accounts to you and Lauren's names, it would be considered a gift under tax laws. If it's mentioned in the will, Kyle might try to take it. Your father gave this money to me secretly while he was still alive to avoid Kyle's interference. Now I want to give it to you and Lauren as a living gift." She explained this to me, but I was still trying to understand the full impact. The amount written in the account book she showed me was huge, unlike anything I could have imagined. I had never seen so much money before. It meant a lot to me that my dad had left this for me, not because of the amount, but because it showed he really cared about me, not just Kyle, who was seen as his successor. This touched me deeply. We didn't often share deep emotional words, but I knew he always cared deeply for us. "I want everything I entrusted to your mother to be passed on to you as a thank you for all the gifts you've given me, and for that, I am truly grateful," he wrote. Before I knew it, tears were streaming down my face. I couldn't hold back my emotions. For a long time, I felt that my father never really understood me, but I was completely wrong. He always understood and valued me. That's probably why he trusted me with that old mini truck, knowing I would value it and use it well. "Mom, I really wish I could have done more for Dad," I said, feeling deep regret. But my mother comforted me with a gentle smile. She seemed to understand the regret I felt, saying, "It's natural to think you could have done more when mourning a parent. But you brought your father great joy and gave him so much love. You were his greatest pride." Hearing her words made me cry again. They also inspired me to make a firm decision. I wouldn't let the company my father built fall into the hands of someone like Kyle, who had wished for his death. I decided to quietly resist and make a careful plan without letting Kyle know I had acquired a significant fortune. The first step was to contact the corporate executives my father had trusted to build a foundation for their support. They agreed to help, supporting my desire to carry on my father's legacy. The reactions made it clear that my father had never spoken poorly of me. Meanwhile, my mother and sister acted soothingly during the letter reading, keeping Kyle's attention off me. They continued to act the same way in front of Kyle, which made him think he had succeeded and looked down on me with arrogance. "Hey, you, abandoned by your father and left a poor man, still intend to stay in this house. I'm the new president now. Admit your defeat and go back home." Kyle would say these words dismissively, waving his hand as if he were shooing away a small fly. Since becoming CEO, Kyle's arrogant attitude created a tense atmosphere in the company. Despite his high position, he ignored his duties and became rude to his staff. This caused a lot of problems, and many skilled employees were left unhappy with his leadership. Kyle didn't question his approach and remained overly confident. "Those who can't grasp my superior vision might as well quit immediately," he would say in public, making decisions without listening to anyone else. As problems in the company increased, Kyle enjoyed spending money and living lavishly, while his passion for the business seemed to disappear. When I first met him, he seemed like a great person. He was skilled, and even my dad liked him. How had he changed so much? Lauren cried every night, hiding her tears from the children. I couldn't just watch the company fall apart. I was quietly planning my next move. The day came when I acted. I left home early and waited at the office for Kyle. When he walked into the president's office, he was shocked to see me sitting there. "What the hell are you doing? Why are you sitting there?" Get this person out of here, he demanded. The one who should be leaving is you, I replied calmly. What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? Kyle looked at me as if I was an annoying insect. Using the assets our father left us, I had bought the majority of the company's shares. An extraordinary general meeting of shareholders was held, and you were officially removed as president, Kyle. I'm sorry to say, but you are no longer the president of this company. Wait just a minute, he stammered, confused and repeating words that made no sense. Don't you understand? I now control 2/3 of this company's shares. You thought the inheritance was just an old mini truck, but that truck turned into money in an unexpected way. Kyle tried to dig into details about the hideaway, but I avoided his questions and changed the subject, which only made him more upset. The game is over. Leave this place immediately, I told him calmly and handed him several documents. As Kyle looked through them, his face went white. What is this? He asked. These are the minutes from the extraordinary general meeting of shareholders, and this other document is your dismissal notice, I explained. Kyle became very angry, crumpled the papers in his hands, and shouted, You think this will hold up? I'll take legal action. Go ahead with legal action. We have good reasons for our actions, I responded calmly. What reasons? You just been after the old man's wealth and this company from the start. It's nothing but jealousy, Kyle accused. Let me ask you directly, Kyle. Have you been using company assets for personal use and signing leasing contracts for your own benefit? I asked. What if I have? What's it to you? Kyle replied, his face turning pale with shock. I kept my gaze fixed on him and continued, You should have been more aware of your responsibilities. Did you become complacent when you thought you controlled everything? I had been gathering information about Kyle's actions from the company's executives. After our father passed away, Kyle became more arrogant. He used to at least pretend to respect others, but as president, he began to shift his work onto others and even fell asleep in his office. This attitude caused many loyal employees who respected my father to leave, frustrated by his behavior. Kyle, upset by the situation, doubted my ability to manage, emphasizing that it was impossible for me to fulfill the role of a manager. You have never worked a day in this company. Think about it. How can someone with no experience in running the company become president? It's impossible to trust management to someone like you, Kyle argued. You're absolutely right, I agreed. I have no intention of becoming the president of this company. My sitting in this chair is just a symbolic message to you. In fact, a new president has already been elected by a different board of directors and is already carrying out their duties. Kyle was stunned. He stood there with his mouth open and his eyes wide, shocked by the turn of events. He had been sure that I was after the presidency and had schemed to replace him. As I've said many times, I'm not after the president's position. My only goal is to honor my father and protect the company he spent his life building, I explained. Who would believe such fancy talk? Kyle retorted. He thought I only cared about the wealth and status that came from our father, not his true worth. After my reply, Kyle trembled with anger for a moment, but then composed himself. Do you think this is over and you can just enjoy it? He scoffed and then stormed out of the president's office. That night, something unexpected happened. Lauren threw divorce papers at Kyle, ending their marriage. This was a result of his misconduct at the company and his eventual firing. The new president was chosen from among the directors who respected my father and were determined to protect what he built. I felt the company should be led by someone who would continue my father's legacy, a sentiment my mother and sister supported. As I coordinated Kyle's dismissal with the lawyers, Lauren was preparing for the divorce. On the day she mentioned divorce, her hurt voice filled the house with a heavy atmosphere. Why do you turn away from me now? Is it because I've lost the title of president and you've lost interest in me? Kyle asked. Maintaining her calm but firm demeanor, Lauren replied, There's no point in talking about betrayal. You were the one who betrayed our relationship from the start. Your love was not for me but for the title of the president's daughter. You neglected our home, didn't help raise our children, showed no respect to our sick father, and in the end, you tried to take everything from our father for yourself. Now it's time for you to face the consequences. Kyle had no response to Lauren's words. She had endured a lot, worrying about her children's futures and the fate of the company, but thankfully, the inheritance from our father gave her a solid financial base to raise her children. After the divorce, we planned to live a peaceful life away from conflict with our mother and sister. Our only concern was the possibility of retaliation from Kyle. But he was now out of funds. He had lost a lot of money to an investment scam and was even in debt. This scam involved the man pretending to be from a brokerage firm who was actually a fraudster. Kyle was played by convincing words, losing a significant amount. This situation showed how people could exploit those who suddenly have a lot of money. Now Kyle was suffering the financial consequences of his actions. Meanwhile, I spent fulfilling days taking care of my mother. I enjoyed a peaceful, comfortable life, continuing my work at the tutoring school. My mother and I also took great joy in caring for my nephew Peter, who was very fond of us. His presence added happiness to our daily lives. When I grow up, I'm going to be a president like Grandpa, Peter declared, his words filled with the innocence of childhood dreams. This brought smiles to our faces and even made my mother tear up with emotion. Lauren and I exchanged knowing looks, our smiles reflecting warmth and understanding. You might say it now, but I wouldn't be surprised if you want to become a teacher when you're in college, I told him gently, reflecting on similar past statements, which made everyone laugh. But I'm not very good at studying, so maybe I won't make a good teacher, he said seriously, furrowing his brow. His earnestness made this even more endearing and prompted more laughter, this time filled with affection. In that moment, filled with an overwhelming sense of happiness, we realized we were truly living in the present, enjoying our family unity, and ready to face whatever the future might bring. Hello everyone, my name is Tina. For a while now, my mother-in-law, Hannah, has been a real thorn in my side. It wasn't until I gave my husband, Eric, an ultimatum that her toxic presence was finally removed from our lives. I thought I'd share this story because I know you'd enjoy the karma. Eric and I met in college. We had the perfect whirlwind romance that's common in college. He was a senior, and I was a freshman. We got acquainted at a party, and the rest is history. I won't bore you with the details of my love life, but after dating for 4 years, we finally decided to get engaged. We waited a while before getting married, mostly because of Hannah. You see, Hannah and my dad went to college together. She was in love with him and wanted to date him, but Dad ended up falling for my mom and marrying her instead. When Hannah first saw me, she said, "Eric, how can you do this to me? You're dating this witch. You know her mom is a homewrecker." "Mom, what are you talking about? I don't understand. Tina is a great person. Why would you say things like this? Her mom destroyed my first love. I should have married Ruby's dad. Nana stole him from me. She's a cheap woman, and I'm sure Tina is no better. Don't talk about my mother like that. She's done nothing to you. My father only dated my mom and no one else." "Yes, he would have dated me if your witch mother hadn't tricked him away. Your mother is a homewrecker." I was appalled by Hannah's words. Yes, my dad did know Hannah. But they never dated. They weren't even friends. My dad said they were batchmates and nothing more. He knew about Eric and Hannah before he passed away after I graduated. He also warned me that Hannah was a little crazy, but I didn't take his warning seriously. Now I could see that he didn't exaggerate. After hearing Hannah attack me and my mom, I decided to cut the visit short. I told Eric that I was leaving. He looked pissed but didn't follow me out. I went home and waited for Eric to return. When he finally came back, he said, "What the hell is wrong with you, Tina? Why did you leave so abruptly? That was extremely rude. You insulted my mom by leaving early." "Excuse me? Are you deaf, Eric? Did you not hear how your mom kept insulting me and my mom? You still expected me to stay there." My mom didn't lie about anything. She was just venting and taking out her frustrations. She's not wrong though. Your mom did steal your dad from my mom. It's natural for her to feel sad. That was years ago, Eric. How can you say my mom stole my dad? My dad told me about Hannah. She wasn't even a friend. Your mother is hung up on the past for no reason. It doesn't matter. The thing is, my mom talked about your dad a lot. It breaks my heart to see her this sad. Now that I see my mother in distress, I don't want your mother around. I can't play in-laws with Nina knowing that she broke my mom's heart. You have to be kidding me. My mom is not responsible for destroying whatever made-up relationship Hannah had in her mind. We fought for days on this topic. Eric didn't even want my mom at our wedding. It was insane. He kept saying that my mom's presence would upset Hannah. In fact, he also said that Hannah was pressuring him not to marry me. I couldn't understand why Eric was taking his mom's side over this stupid issue. Hannah was acting like an unreasonable person, and I knew she needed professional help to get over my dad. Hannah was super manipulative and had a strong influence on Eric. Since she was a single mother, Eric tended to take her side over everyone else. Hannah never liked me. I tried my best to extend an olive branch every time I could. However, she rejected me every time and found ways to humiliate me and my family. At our rehearsal dinner, there was a huge fiasco between my mom and Hannah. So far, we have been able to keep Hannah and Nina from meeting. But the rehearsal was inevitable, and so was their meeting. Eric tried to stop my mom from attending. He said, "Why can't your mom skip the rehearsal, Tina? She doesn't need to be there anyway. You know my mom will be there. I don't think Nina should come." Why the hell would I ask my mom to skip the rehearsal? She has done nothing wrong. Hannah is the one who is still obsessed with the past. Look, I don't care if Nina is innocent. I just know that my mom has trouble being around her. It's my wedding, and I don't want my mom to be unhappy. She's the only one I have. This is also my wedding, Eric. Just because I have a sister doesn't mean my mother has become disposable. You know I am close to her. After even more arguing, I put my foot down. There was no way my mother was getting uninvited from the wedding or rehearsal. I had accommodated Hannah and her stupid demands for long enough. However, nothing prepared me for what happened during our rehearsal. Hannah straight up approached my mom and started yelling at her. "You are that witch who destroyed my life. How dare you mess up my life?" "What are you talking about, Hannah? I didn't do anything to you. If this is about my husband, you two were not even in a relationship. I don't know why you're blaming me because he fell for me. He would have been mine if you hadn't interfered. I would have nabbed him. You are nothing but a homewrecker first. You took him away and then tracked him with a child. Now your witch daughter is trying to steal my son. Hannah, you are insane. I know you kept tabs on me and my husband. We never confronted you because we didn't want trouble. Hell, I didn't even stop my daughter when she told us about Eric. Eric and Tina are happy together, Hannah. Let's not ruin their day." Hannah wouldn't listen. She kept shouting at my mom and me, calling us all sorts of names. Some of them downright disgusting. I won't repeat them here. You can imagine. The guests were extremely uncomfortable, and most of them were appalled by Hannah's reaction, which only enraged her further. Eric, incredibly, still took his mother's side. After the party was over, we went home, and an argument ensued. Eric was furious at my mom for everything. "Sue, this is why I didn't want Nina around. Look how she destroyed our wedding. How can you still blame my mom, Eric? This is ridiculous. Hannah made a huge scene today. She started it, and my mom was way too soft on her. Your mom shouldn't have come to the rehearsal. She has no regard for my mom's feelings. I no longer want her in my life. I don't want a relationship with her ever. Don't even talk to me about her, and I don't want her at my house frequently." "Fine then, Eric. If you don't want a relationship with her, that's fine. But I'm not abandoning my mom for nothing." After our arguments, I had serious doubts about marrying him. Eric was a great boyfriend and fiancé, and between the two of us, happiness and love were abundant. This was the only problem plaguing us. I talked to my mom about my fears, and I wasn't sure about continuing with the wedding. "Mom, I think I should postpone the wedding. Eric's behavior is giving me lots of doubts. He has been very unfair towards you, all because of his mom." "Tina, Eric loves you a lot. I would never forgive myself if I were the reason for your breakup. If you love and care for him, and he does the same, these things won't come between you." "But Mom, I can't have him insulting you every time. It breaks my heart to know he won't have a relationship with you." "It's okay, Tina. It's natural for Eric to side with Hannah. She is his mom. As for me, I'm thinking about going back to my hometown in another country. I've been lonely without your father, and you're getting married now. I'll be away and won't be a problem for your relationship. It'll be the best solution for all of us." Yes, my mother decided to move to another country so I could be happy. I can't stop praising this woman. She's literally the best mom ever. I begged her to stay, but she said she needed to be with her extended family. Dad's passing had affected her a lot. In the end, I let her go because I didn't want her to feel lonely. Eric never found out about my mom leaving. He didn't know for another 3 years after our wedding. It wasn't until Hannah decided to try and nuke our marriage. Before Mom left, I started visiting her very often. She was around for 1 month after I got married, and I wanted to spend as much time with her as possible. I was pissed at Eric, so I never told him about Mom's decision to leave. Instead, I just told him I was visiting her. Eric wasn't happy with my frequent visits even though I did it when he wasn't home. Hannah also put ideas into his head that I was manipulating him. After my mom left, I continued visiting her place, mostly to take care of the house and the garden she had lovingly built. However, Hannah was convinced that I was conspiring with my mom against Eric and her, so she did something horrible. One day while I was out grocery shopping, Eric called me. He sounded very angry, which made me anxious. "Why is your mother at our home for the 7th time this month? This is getting ridiculous, Tana. I told you I don't want that woman in my house. I overlooked the first few times because I didn't want to deprive you of your mother, but now this is becoming too much." "What the hell are you talking about, Eric? My mom hasn't been coming over at all. I'm not even at the house right now. Are you out of your mind?" "Don't lie to me, Tana. I know she's been over recently. Mom has told me everything. She saw Nina's car in the driveway." "You have to be kidding me, Eric. Your mom must have mixed things up. My mom is in a different country. She hasn't been here for over 3 years. She moved just after our wedding." "That is impossible. I would have known if she had moved. Stop protecting your mother every time, Eric. I didn't tell you because you didn't want to hear about my mom. She moved because she didn't want to come between us. How can you accuse me or my mom of going behind your back? But mom said she has been over." "What is going on? I'm confused now. Even the neighbor said she saw a lady coming over." "Why don't you come home so that we can see the CCTV footage? That will answer all our questions. If someone has been coming over, they are trespassing, and this is a serious problem." Eric quickly hung up the phone and agreed to come straight away. I too left my doctor's appointment and headed straight home. When we reached home, we saw that someone had indeed been in the house. That immediately gave me goosebumps. When we finally pulled up the CCTV footage, we were shocked. It turns out Hannah was the one trespassing into the house. We never even gave her a key, and we had no idea how she got access. Eric and I were furious. We immediately called Hannah and told her to come over. When she did, we confronted her. "Why the hell have you been coming to our house when it is empty? Where did you even get a key? Mom, what is going on here? You said Nina has been coming over to meet with Tana." "Yeah, of course, she is, Eric. Your wife has been going behind your back and meeting with that homewrecker." "Mom, why the hell are you lying? We know it was you. Damn it. Why would you lie to us?" "I'm not lying to you, Eric. I saw her with my own eyes. Your witch of a wife is brainwashing you." "Hannah, stop blaming me and Mom for everything. Mom hasn't even been in this country for 3 years. Besides, I guess you didn't know that we have CCTVs around our house. We saw you come in when we were gone." Hearing this, Hannah turned extremely pale. The color drained from her face. If I wasn't so concerned about our safety, I would have laughed at her expression, but I was too anxious to do that. Eric was also stunned and looked at Hannah in disbelief. "Mom, tell me what I'm seeing here. How the hell did you even find a key?" Well, I made one for you. Since your witch of a wife wouldn't give me a key, I had to do this. You can't blame me for this." "Mom, you stole our keys to make a copy from them? Are you insane? It was both mine and Tina's decision not to give you a key. This is our house, and we deserve some privacy. You basically committed a felony, Mom." "You say that to me? I am your mom, and I should have access to your house." "First of all, Hannah, no. Just no. You don't deserve to breach our privacy. Secondly, why did you drag my mom into this? She is innocent. I'm sure you've been letting your mom come here. I wanted to warn my son. Sooner or later, it would have happened. Your mom stole my man, and now you're stealing my son. I can't let that happen." "Mom, stop it. I've tried very hard to be on your side, but you have crossed the line." "I don't think I can trust you after this," Eric said, his voice full of disappointment. "This is all Tina's fault, Eric. You shouldn't have married her. She's taking you away from me. I had to do this to make you see some reason," Hannah retorted. By that time, I was done with Hannah. I had put up with her insults for far too long. She kept insulting me and my mom, but I never retaliated. I even limited contact with my mom to please Eric and Hannah. But now, I couldn't hold back any longer. I tore into Hannah and Eric. "I have had enough of you insulting my mom, Hannah. I won't put up with this anymore. Eric, I know you love your mom, but she has crossed the line. If you continue to stay in contact with her, I will leave. There is no way I'm putting up with her behavior any longer. I am done. Tina, you don't have to leave. I have seen enough already. Mom, just leave and don't contact us again. I will be calling the police to report you for trespassing and making a key without our permission. I'm done with you. No, Eric, you can't do this to me. How can you take Tana's side after everything? She and her mom want to destroy me. Don't let them do this. That's it, Mom. Leave my house immediately. I don't want to see you again. Don't contact us. I'll put a restraining order against you. Hannah wouldn't listen. She kept throwing tantrums and even tried to attack me. That's when Eric called the police, and they arrested her. We submitted the CCTV footage and had the neighbor confirm that they saw Hannah entering our house. Hannah was taken away in cuffs. When the police finally left with her, Eric turned to me and said, "Tina, I have absolutely no words to tell you how much I messed up. I'm so sorry. I never should have prioritized my mom over yours. I knew she was being unreasonable, but I wanted to support her. I had no idea she would do something like this. Eric, things can't go on like this anymore. My mom and I have suffered enough. It has to end somewhere. You let your mom attack me and my mom all the time, and we never protested. My mom even left the country to save me from having to choose. I know, Tina. I'm so sorry for everything. I will apologize to Nana as well. She didn't deserve this treatment. I take full responsibility for making things this way, and don't worry, I won't let Mom get away with this." True to his word, Eric called my mom and apologized. He was worried that she wouldn't speak to him, but she agreed to hear him out. Eric said, "I'm so sorry for treating you badly, Nina. I know you didn't deserve this. Today's events just opened my eyes to how horrible and manipulative my mom can be. It's okay, Eric. I don't blame you. It's natural for you to take your mom's side. I know you value your family a lot, which is why I never opposed Tana marriage to you. You've always been patient with me. You were also my family, and I failed to be there for you. Please forgive me. Will you come back? I promise it won't be a problem anymore." "No, Eric. I've gotten quite comfortable here. I don't want to come back. I'll visit, but I think I am happier here. Don't blame yourself for this. Just make sure you protect my daughter and take care of her. That's all I want." Eric was even more devastated by my mom's words. He finally understood how badly he had messed up. He also grew a newfound respect for my mom, which made me happy to see that things would finally change. As for Hannah, Eric and I refused to withdraw our case or even grant her bail. Some relatives did call us to take her side. However, they quickly changed their minds once we told them everything. Apparently, Hannah had cooked up a story that wasn't true at all, so they didn't know what had really happened. One aunt did bail her out but told her never to call her again. The police also told her to stay away from us. Hannah didn't listen to the police. She kept approaching us and even showed up at Eric's work and our house. When the harassment didn't stop, we filed restraining orders against her. That finally made her stop visiting. From what our extended family told us, Hannah had lost her job due to the police report. She was begging for money and showing up at everyone's house for help. No one was willing to help her unless she joined therapy. They even offered to pay for it, but Hannah refused their offer, so they shut the door in her face. Last I heard, she was struggling to find a job and was about to lose her house. Eric still finds it difficult to deal with the fiasco. He joined therapy, where he realized just how narcissistic Hannah was. Her manipulative ways had also affected him mentally, and he is still in recovery. He has made good progress and is slowly learning to identify the abusive behaviors of Hannah. So far, he has absolutely no intentions of ever seeing her again. Hello everyone, I'm Lana. I must be one of the oldest people here sharing a story. There's a first time for everything. This story is being written by Riley, who was married to my grandson Joe. My late husband Matt and I raised Joe since he was a toddler after his parents died in a tragic car accident. We were the only ones left to care for him. We watched him grow and supported him in every way possible to ensure his success in life. When Joe showed up with Riley and told us they had gotten married, Matt and I were shocked. We were hurt that they had eloped right out of high school. Riley's parents had disowned her because of the wedding, so Joe brought her to our house. We took them both in and promised to help them out. Joe went to college while Riley stayed behind and took care of us. Eventually, Joe got a great job and started achieving his goals. We were proud of him, but things were about to take a turn for the worse. Shortly after Joe landed a high-level job in a cutthroat industry, he and Riley were even planning to have a child. However, a few months later, Riley arrived crying on our doorstep. She was a mess, and we didn't know what to do. When she came in, I asked, "What is going on, Riley? You look horrible. Why are you crying so much? You need to tell us what happened. You're starting to scare us." "I don't know what to say, guys. Joe has left me. He's gone." "What are you talking about, Riley?" I asked. "I'm telling you the truth, Matt. Joe is gone, and so is his stuff. He left a note saying he wants to divorce me and start a new life. He doesn't love me anymore." Riley went into a sobbing fit while Matt and I tried to wrap our heads around what we had just heard. It was bizarre and hard to believe. Joe had been growing distant from all of us, and we were planning to talk to him about it. But before we could, Riley arrived at our doorstep. Matt and I calmed Riley down and decided to talk to Joe separately. We immediately called him, praying that this was just a misunderstanding. When he picked up, Matt nervously said, "Where are you, Joe?" "I just found your wife crying on our doorstep. She's saying you have abandoned her. What's going on? Tell me this isn't true." "It's not a joke, guys. I've left her for good. Riley and I are done." Joe's voice was serious, and it was clear he wasn't joking. Matt and I were stunned. We had always thought they were happy. Joe had often said he married the love of his life. I couldn't imagine you would do this to her. "You can't be serious, Joe. Riley is your wife. You can't just up and leave for no reason." "I haven't left without any reason, Grandma. I told her in detail how I no longer love her." "What happened, Joe? Why did your feelings suddenly change? You need to tell us everything so we can understand." "I can tell you, but I don't think you'll get it." "We will try, Joe. We love you, and we want to know what's wrong. We can't let you just abandon your wife without knowing the real reason. Tell us and let us think of a solution." "Look, I don't need your permission to do what I want, but if you're so interested in knowing the truth, I'll tell you. Now that I have a great job, I can't have an average girl like Riley as my wife anymore." Matt and I were stunned into silence. We couldn't believe our little grandson Joe had turned into such a vile and shallow person. We didn't raise him to abandon people or to think this way. His words made us both very angry. "What is this nonsense, Joe? You are being downright mean and delusional. Riley is a great girl, and you are insulting her. This is not how a marriage works. Riley loves you, and you love her. That's what's most important." "That's not true. I want a better wife because I could have a better one. And guess what? I already found someone who's way better than Riley. My new girlfriend is more beautiful and successful. They don't even compare." The conversation kept getting worse with every sentence Joe said. Matt and I were getting angrier. Joe was being extremely nonchalant and admitted he had an affair. Still, Matt and I knew we had to find out more about what happened. Knowing the whole truth was important for us and for Riley. "Are you telling us that you had an affair, Joe, and you're leaving Riley to be with your mistress? Is that what you're saying? Call it whatever you want. I don't care what name you give to our relationship. The fact is, I am in love with my new girlfriend, and she is everything to me now." "What about Riley, Joe? She was everything to you too. That's what you told us when you asked for our help and blessing to get married." "I was young and stupid, Grandpa. I really should have waited before settling for an average girl. Thank God I realized my mistake before having kids with her. I would have been stuck with her for life." "I don't believe this, Joe. You're being so nonchalant about all of this. You've made a huge mistake and crossed a major boundary by cheating on your wife. You've disappointed us, Joe." "Well, I don't care. I'm happy with my new woman, so you should be happy for me too. She made me realize that I was wasting my time with an insignificant woman. She was right. She is so much better than Riley." Matt was getting very angry with Joe, and this last comment pushed him over the edge. He despised cheaters as much as I did. Joe might have been our grandson, but he was acting like a different person. He expected us to accept his new life and not hold him accountable for his actions. But we weren't willing to do that. In his anger, Matt said, "No, absolutely not, Joe. We will not be happy about what you've done, and we will never accept your new life." I had to agree with Matt. "Joe, from your words, it's clear that this woman knew you were a married man, so she wasn't in the dark about what she was doing. This is just plain wrong, and we will never accept a girl like that." "Very well then," Joe replied. "This makes things much better. My new girlfriend doesn't want me to be so close to you guys anyway. She thinks you try to control me and that I will never reach my full potential if I keep listening to you. Looks like she was right. I winced when Joe said that. The more he talked, the further away I felt from him. I used to see the essence of my son in Joe, but the man on the phone didn't even feel like he was related to me. Joe was so influenced by his new girlfriend that he was ready to cut us off for her. He actually said those words out loud, choosing this girl over the people who raised him. Tears welled up in my eyes from the sheer betrayal. I said in a shaky voice, "You will abandon us for this woman too. How can you even say that, Joe?" "I'm serious about this, Grandma. Lana has been right about everything. If you can't even be happy for me, you don't deserve to be in my life." "Is that a threat, Joe? If we don't forgive you for your nonsense and accept your new girlfriend, will you cut us off?" "Yes, I actually will do that. Since you want to take Riley's side so badly, let her be your grandchild instead of me. I'm done. We raised you for 20 years, and this is how you repay us. We did our best and sacrificed a lot to make sure you were taken care of. Now we know that it was all in vain. You have turned into an absolute monster." Those were some of the last words Matt spoke to Joe. The conversation that followed is not worth mentioning. There was a lot of back and forth, and Joe ended up calling us some awful things. I knew he was hurt that we didn't accept his choices right away. But what option did we have? We weren't going to blindly support Joe's decisions just because he is our grandson. He was behaving like a very cruel person and putting this new girl above everyone else. He also showed no remorse for the wrongs he had done. It absolutely broke our hearts when Matt and I finally ended our conversation with Joe. We knew one thing: Joe was beyond help now. He was adamant about cutting us off if we didn't accept his new life. He was forcing us to do something we didn't want to do. In the end, before we could even make a decision, our grandson cut us off for good. He blocked us everywhere, effectively severing all connections. Joe and Riley ended up getting a divorce after Joe didn't come back for a full year. Riley was a mess and relied on me and my husband for emotional support. We invited her into our home because she was devastated by what Joe did to her. Matt and I never regretted the decision to make Riley a part of our family. When our own grandson abandoned us, Riley was there. After she got back on her feet and became emotionally strong, she became our rock. Joe didn't talk to us for 5 years, not a single word. We never reached out because it was never our decision to cut him off. Matt and I miss our grandson, I won't lie about that. However, his betrayal cut deep and left us bleeding inside. My husband never got to see or talk to Joe again. He died before Joe reached out to us. When Matt passed away, I didn't know whether to invite Joe to the funeral. I was a broken mess and wanted my grandson there. It was Riley who convinced me to call him. She said, "Listen to me, Lana. I know you miss your grandson. Go and call him, tell him what happened, and ask him to come to the funeral." "I don't know, Riley. I still haven't forgiven him for what he did." "It was a long time ago, Lana. It's okay if you don't want to forgive him, but I think you will always feel guilty and have regrets if you don't try once. Don't you think inviting him to the funeral will be a good idea?" "I feel really unsure, Riley." You and Matt raised Joe almost like your own child, Lana. As a parent, you could give him this one chance to grieve someone he loves. Joe loved you too. Maybe this time you will finally see how wrong he was to cut you off. Riley's words gave me some hope. She was right. I didn't want to regret not calling Joe to the funeral. Maybe he still loved us and would want to pay his respects to his grandpa one last time, even if he was too prideful to talk to us. It was my duty to reach out to him. Besides, Riley had moved on with a great man, and I was ready to try and mend the bridges with Joe too. So I said to Riley, "Okay, Riley, I will invite Joe to the funeral, but he has blocked me everywhere. I don't have his contact anymore. I don't know how to reach him." "Don't worry, Lana. He never blocked me on social media. I can reach out to him on your behalf. You can dictate the message and I'll type it out and send it to him." "That sounds great, Riley. I hope you're right about this. I don't want to have any regrets if Joe wants to pay his final respects to his grandfather." Riley excitedly sent the text that I dictated to her. I was starting to have some hope after Riley talked to me about possibly moving on from the incident. She didn't like that Joe had boycotted us and we lost our bond with him. Sometimes she felt guilty, although none of this was her fault. She never told us not to support Joe's decision, and she didn't tell Joe to block us or leave us. Despite what happened in the past and the fact that Joe never reached out again, I was willing to take the chance. I was ready to have some closure and maybe find it in my heart to forgive him. My hopes were short-lived. The first indication came when we found out that Joe had received and seen the message, but he never replied. We had provided all the details of the funeral, so we thought maybe he didn't need more information and might still show up. Riley and I held onto a sliver of hope that he would turn up at the funeral. I was willing to extend an olive branch just to see if he had changed a little. Believe me, I really wanted Joe and me to have a relationship despite everything. I was looking forward to seeing him, but my hopes were in vain. The funeral came and went. It was a beautiful day with the sun shining brightly, a day Matt would have liked. The service was very emotional but went well. Riley held me throughout the entire time. Joe never showed up. I kept looking at the door, hoping he would arrive any minute. When I went home, the realization hit me hard. Joe hadn't bothered to show up at Matt's funeral. I can't tell you how heartbroken I was. It sealed my resolve about the decision I had left to make. A day after the funeral, Matt's will was to be read. Riley and I were patiently waiting for Matt's estate lawyer to arrive. The first person to walk through the door wasn't our lawyer, it was Joe. I was dumbfounded to see him nonchalantly walk into the house with complete disregard. I said, "What are you doing here, Joe?" "What do you think I'm doing here? I heard that you're supposed to read the will today. What does it have to do with you? I'm your only grandson, in case you've forgotten. I've come to take my rightful inheritance from Grandpa." I was stunned by what Joe said. Riley was equally surprised, and his words shocked her even more. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was fuming with rage. I looked Joe straight in the eye and said, "You have some nerve showing up after 5 years and straight up demanding money. You didn't even come to Matt's funeral. Did you have any respect for your grandfather, Joe? Oh, stop the theatrics right now. There was no need for me to show up at the funeral. What would I have said anyway? It's not like I've come to reestablish anything. I've just come for my rightful inheritance. What makes you think you are entitled to anything after you abandoned us for 5 years? I'm not here to entertain your stupid questions, Grandma. Just call the lawyer and tell him to be here soon. I don't have much time." Joe's coldness made my heart boil. I was furious and wanted to throw him out immediately, but I decided to teach him a good lesson instead. I picked up my phone and told our lawyer to come over immediately. He was already on his way and arrived within minutes. Joe didn't bother with small talk and ignored Riley completely. When the lawyer arrived, Joe looked excited. However, my lawyer was confused and said, "Why is Joe here? This is a private will reading. He doesn't need to be here." Joe replied, "I'm here to get my inheritance from Matt's estate. I'm his sole heir." The lawyer said, "That's ridiculous. I never called Joe for the reading. He doesn't need to be here at all." "What? Of course I needed to be here. I'm the sole heir of Matt's estate. I know that already." "I don't know who told you that, but you are mistaken, Joe. You are not the sole heir of Matt's estate. In fact, you were not even mentioned in the will." "I don't believe a word you're saying. I'm definitely included in the will. I'm his grandson and his only heir. Why wouldn't I be mentioned?" While Joe raged with confusion, I was enjoying watching him squirm. He deserved it for what he did to us. As Joe acted all shocked, I decided to serve him some cold, hard revenge. I said, "Oh, Joe, you are a dense man. You want to know why you haven't been named in the will? Well, it's because Matt disinherited you. No, that's not possible. He wouldn't do that to me. I'm his blood, his only surviving heir. He would never disinherit me. Do you think we believe in that old-fashioned stuff? Matt wanted to leave his inheritance to someone who deserved it, not just someone with his blood. This can't be happening. I'm the rightful heir. How could he leave his estate to anyone else? If he disinherited me, who got my share of the inheritance?" "You really want to know?" Matt gave it to Riley. Joe and Riley were both stunned. They looked at the lawyer for confirmation, and he simply nodded. It came as a shock to them, but not to me. Matt and I had jointly decided to cut Joe off and give everything to Riley. Joe couldn't accept this. He turned pale and said, "This has to be a joke. Why would he leave everything to Riley? This is not fair." "Then what is fair, Joe? Do you really think Matt would leave his hard-earned assets to a grandson who abandoned him and didn't even bother to show up at the funeral? I'm his blood. Matt wouldn't do that to me. Believe me, Joe, he was perfectly happy making this decision. If you think I'm tricking you, the lawyer will show you the will." "How could you let him do this, Grandma?" "It was an easy decision, Joe. We raised you, but you only managed to stab us in the back and abandon us. Riley was here for us, and she is the rightful heir to our estate. I won't be here for long, so you better remember this. I will also disinherit you and leave everything to Riley. You will never get another cent from me, and you will pay for abandoning us." I vividly remember what happened next. I went straight to the front door and opened it myself, showing Joe the way out. When he was gone, the will was read, and true to my word, Joe's inheritance was left to Riley. She was a crying mess and thanked us for being her family when her own blood turned their backs on her. I simply said that she did the same for me and Matt. Joe left that day but continued to try and contact me. He was desperate for reconciliation and even left his new wife, who had previously convinced him to cut us off. Suffice it to say, he's going through hell while I am preparing to watch Riley walk down the aisle to her happiness. I still miss Matt like crazy, but I can't say I miss Joe at all. He chose to abandon us, and I have finally made my peace with it. I have Riley along with the beautiful memories of my husband and children, which are enough to last me this lifetime.